In Huaxiaowai City, the apocalypse erupted without warning, turning the once peaceful city into a perilous wasteland. Hordes of zombies filled every corner, dangerous and ravenous. Inside a dingy apartment building, Han Dongsheng could not escape his fate and transformed into a zombie. But unlike the other zombies, he was a sentient one. He stared at his reflection in the mirror. A corpse-like face, hollow eyes. A complete blank of comprehension. Bro, I transmigrated into this world, worked hard to get a decent job, and now this. A zombie crisis out of nowhere. Han Dongsheng was originally not from this world. He had accidentally crossed over, lived here for 2 years thinking it was an ordinary parallel reality, only to find that the real calamity was waiting for him. At this moment, Han Dongsheng was utterly confused, wondering how he should proceed. He had read many apocalypse novels, but one where the protagonist is a zombie. He had never read one. After becoming a zombie, he lost all desire for normal food. His mind was filled with a single word: meat. Fresh raw meat, especially human flesh. Though he didn't understand his situation, Han Dongsheng knew he couldn't stay cooped up at home. The end of the world was like an online game. Abundant resources at the start, but dwindling later. He had to go out and gather as many supplies as possible. Having made up his mind, Han Dongsheng opened the door. Growl. The screech of the security door startled him as a zombie wandered just outside in the hallway. But soon he realized he was also a zombie. The creature before him was one of his own kind and felt no aggression toward him. Alas, born of the same zombie kin, why hasten to consume each other? Han Dongsheng patted the zombie on the shoulder and then left the building, heading to the convenience store downstairs for supplies. Although normal food and water were useless to him, that didn't mean he couldn't trade supplies with humans later for what he... As long as he hid well, who would ever suspect a zombie possessing human thought? This thought made him slightly excited, and soon he reached the convenience store downstairs. Inside the store, several zombies were wandering around, but Han Dongsheng paid them no mind. They had no intention of attacking him, so why care? He stuffed items from the shelves into his backpack, unaware that a person was hiding in the store's storage room. A little girl about 8 or 9 years old hid inside the storage room. Looking at the familiar surroundings, she couldn't believe her eyes. She had actually traveled back to the very beginning of the apocalypse. Yes, this little girl was also a transmigrator. In the future, she would become one of the world's most renowned supreme powerhouses. Liu Ruoxin. 20 years after the apocalypse, the strongest esper and Huaxiao leader of the Shuguang district. She had led humanity in an attempt to reclaim their homeland from the zombies. But no one anticipated an ultra-monster among the zombies. All the powerful espers in Huaxiao were slaughtered, the entire region completely fell, and humanity ultimately hurtled toward extinction. This zombie crisis looked simple on the surface, but Liu Ruoxin understood it was only the appetizer. 1 year later, many zombies would begin to split, birthing new ones. More and more zombies emerged, spreading across almost all of Huaxia. Over the next decade, 9-year zombie kings constantly appeared, and in the final battle, even beings beyond 9-year manifested. Recalling the past, Liu Ruoxin's eyes revealed a sorrow and helplessness far beyond her age. But the emotion vanished in a flash. In this life, she carried many memories and also knew how to evolve her esper ability. She already had an ability weak for now, but with time she was confident she could become even stronger than in her previous life. Most importantly, she knew how to break through to the realm beyond the 9th tier. As Liu Ruoxin pondered her next steps, the locked door of the storage room began to be forced open from the outside. The storage room had a flimsy wooden door, easy to break. In her past life, Liu Ruoxin had hidden here without making a sound until a squad cleared the store a week later and found her. But that happened a week later. Why was it happening now? Could her rebirth have altered the original timeline? Liu Ruoxin's mind went blank as she scrambled to react. And at that moment, the wooden door was forced open, revealing a zombie. The zombie looked at Liu Ruoxin. Liu Ruoxin looked at the zombie. Silence hung in the air. Cold sweat dripped from her forehead. Han Dongsheng's mind was also blank. How is there a kid here? It's over, him dead. Despair flooded Liu Ruoxin. Her ability had just awakened, the early-stage non-offensive copy ability. This ability could copy other people's powers for her own use. But the problem was she had never copied anything. She was exactly the same as an ordinary person right now. Just as Liu Ruoxin thought she would die right after being reborn, a shocking scene unfolded before her eyes. The zombie ignored her completely, closed the wooden door, and began examining the supplies in the storage room. Liu Ruoxin was utterly baffled. Why didn't this ordinary zombie attack her? The storage room was packed with supplies. Instant noodles, bottled water, all kinds of necessities. But unfortunately, with Han Dongsheng's current strength, he couldn't carry everything out at once. I'll move them bit by bit. Han Dongsheng thought about leaving, but as he opened the door, he remembered the store was full of zombies outside. If he left the little girl alone here, the other zombies would definitely eat her alive. This flimsy wooden door couldn't stop anything, especially after he had just broken its lock. And this little girl looked oddly like his younger sister from his past life. Damn it, I Han Dongsheng am definitely not the kind of person who would watch someone die. Wait, zombie. With that, Han Dongsheng hoisted the still-dazed Liu Ruoxin onto his shoulder. In the next moment, he kicked open the wooden door carrying the girl as he sprinted past the zombies, a real-life speed and fury. Han Dongsheng expected that the scent of a living human would draw a horde, but he hadn't considered one crucial thing. These were all ordinary zombies at the same rank as him. Ordinary zombies don't steal another ordinary zombie. Right now in their eyes, Han Dongsheng was like a fisherman who had just caught a 100-pound fish parading it around with. Han Dongsheng carried Liu Ruoxin on his shoulder, dashing along while shouting, "Don't come any closer. Before I turned into a zombie, I was a murderer. I was damn fierce." However, due to his zombie body, all the words he wanted to say turned into strange howls which sounded like boasts to the surrounding ordinary zombies. Finally, Liu Ruoxin was successfully carried home by Han Dongsheng. Bang! The security door closed. Han Dongsheng sat on the floor, sighing in relief. He subconsciously wiped his forehead, but found no sweat. I can't believe that a dignified zombie actually saved a human. This goes against the zombie principle. Han Dongsheng thought sarcastically. Then he took out some bottled water he had scavenged from his backpack and handed it to Liu Ruoxin. Liu Ruoxin took the water bottle in a daze. Then she saw the zombie in front of her smile and give her a thumbs up. Her mind went blank for a moment. Then she suddenly realized and gasped inwardly. This was actually a zombie that still retained human consciousness. My God, how is this possible? Liu Ruoxin was extremely shocked. Having lived 2 lives, this was the first time she had ever seen such a situation. Although zombies were transformed from humans, they had become a completely different species. They shouldn't retain human consciousness. What is going on? Although Liu Ruoxin couldn't fully understand the situation, she also realized that the zombie in front of her wouldn't harm her. Was this a blessing in disguise? Liu Ruoxin drank the water while thinking about her current situation. Meanwhile, Han Dongsheng sat on the sofa beginning to contemplate what to do next. As an ordinary zombie, he was nothing but cannon fodder in the apocalypse. How could he change his fate? Han Dongsheng was clueless, and just then he heard a voice in his mind. Come to me. Come to me. The voice was extremely seductive. Even though Han Dongsheng had self-awareness, he momentarily lost focus and stood up. However, he quickly regained control of his body through sheer willpower. Something is calling me. Han Dongsheng was confused and greatly shocked. Suddenly at that moment, he felt a strange energy surge within his body. Ability: you can replicate all zombie abilities that attack you for your own. Use new ability Zombie Control. You can mentally control 10 ordinary zombies. This ability will be enhanced as your rank increases. 3 pieces of information flashed through his mind, and Han Dongsheng was momentarily stunned. So I have an ability. With a thought, the 2 zombies that had been wandering in the corridor suddenly gathered at his doorstep. At the same time, 10 zombies had already gone downstairs and gathered at the flower bed below Han Dongsheng's building. Among them, 1 zombie was encircled by the other 9, appearing to be the original owner of the zombie control ability. Kill the zombies that possess cores and devour their cores to increase your own rank. Another message flashed, and at this moment Han Dongsheng suddenly knew how he should develop himself. At the same time, he began to wonder how this information had appeared in his mind. In his previous life, he had been a biologist. At that moment, a possibility suddenly occurred to him. Many animals, upon reaching a certain age, have genetically inherited information appear in their brains. For example, many animals know when to let their offspring leave and when to stop nursing. It seems that zombies also have similar genetic information, which becomes unlocked upon reaching a certain strength. Because he had unlocked his ability, the genetic lock was opened, allowing him to obtain this information. After figuring these things out, Han Dongsheng showed a look of realization, and at the same time a plan took shape in his mind. Ayo. Han Dongsheng pointed at Liu Ruoxin, signaling her to stay put and not go out. Although Liu Ruoxin couldn't understand the zombie's words, she grasped his meaning through his body language. I'll take care of myself. Liu Ruoxin nodded gently. Han Dongsheng left satisfied, and then Liu Ruoxin hurried to the window to see what was happening outside. Upon discovering that zombies outside were gathering for no reason, she was startled. A psychic controlling zombie. In her past life, the most dangerous type in the early apocalypse was this kind of zombie, because they could manipulate zombies to form tides, leading to the collapse of many shelters. How could Liu Ruoxin not be shocked to see such a zombie appear here? And while she was horrified, she suddenly noticed that the zombie brother, who had just gone out, was also among the zombie crowd downstairs. No, zombie brother has been controlled. Liu Ruoxin had already considered Han Dongsheng as her brother in her heart. Seeing him controlled, how could she not be anxious? But being anxious was useless. She was powerless now. What could she do? Liu Ruoxin felt helpless and could only watch helplessly as her zombie brother left with the zombie group. The 2 zombies wandering in the building had already been controlled by Han Dongsheng through mental power and locked inside a room, so he was not worried about Liu Ruoxin's safety. And the reason he had mingled into the controlled zombie group was to kill the zombie that possessed the ability. This zombie was clearly just like him, having just awakened their ability and not even reached the first rank. If he killed it, he would probably obtain the so-called core, and then he could break through to become a true first-rank zombie. Han Dongsheng followed behind the ability zombie. It was a female zombie, looking no different from ordinary zombies. Han Dongsheng had a fruit knife tucked at his waist, ready to strike at any moment. The 10 zombies, including Han Dongsheng, were led by the female zombie to another building about 5 blocks away. The female zombie let out a roar. Then the window of a third-floor apartment suddenly shattered, and the next moment a heavily muscled zombie landed in front of them. This was clearly also a zombie that had just awakened its ability not long ago. Han Dongsheng's gaze swept over the female zombie and noticed that she was missing an arm. Then he noticed that the mutated zombie also had wounds on its body. It seemed that the female zombie had fought the mutated zombie before. Both sides had suffered heavy losses, and now the female zombie had regrouped to take revenge. Ayo! The female zombie let out a roar, and the 9 surrounding zombies immediately charged at the mutated zombie. Only Han Dongsheng stood still, not moving. Ayo! The female zombie was confused and turned her head to look at Han Dongsheng. But just then Han Dongsheng suddenly drew the fruit knife from his waist and slashed at her neck. At the same time, the ordinary zombies that had charged at the mutated zombie were taken over by Han Dongsheng's control. They turned around and pounced on the female zombie, starting to tear at her. The female zombie was not a combat type of fragile. It was easily killed by the other zombies in moments, and a blood-red ability crystal was now clutched in Han Dongsheng's hand. A consuming desire surged from his body. Without hesitation, he devoured the crystal. At the same time, the mutant zombie launched its attack upon him. Roar! A guttural roar tore from Han Dongsheng's throat. In that instant, his rank successfully broke through to the first tier, his body undergoing enhancement. Yet unlike normal zombies, his advancement to first tier did not cause his muscles to bulge. Instead, the pale, cadaverous hue of his skin turned slightly more normal. The fissures that had once marred his zombie form now healed completely. Thump! Ability strength enhancement. Your strength will be enhanced as your rank increases. Han Dongsheng successfully copied the ability of the mutant zombie before him. He quickly retreated, dispersing the force of the attack. His left arm had been twisted and deformed, but he felt no pain. With a gentle twist, he snapped it back into place. Zombies possess exceptional regenerative power, and Han Dongsheng, now a first-tier zombie, had even greater healing ability. The mutant zombie roared in fury, ready to charge again, but suddenly froze. Ability manipulation. His zombie manipulation ability had now evolved. He could control ordinary mutant zombies with abilities, the limit rising from 10 to 30 and the range expanding to a 1-kilometer radius. Roar! Han Dongsheng let out a zombie-like howl, and the next moment all zombies wandering within a 1-kilometer radius swiftly converged toward him. Counting the mutant zombie, that made 30 zombies in total. Han Dongsheng suddenly felt a thrill of commanding an army on the battlefield. Han Dongsheng was exhilarated, but the survivors in the residential complex were stunned by the sight. Having such a terrifying zombie appear in their community was nothing short of a nightmare. How could they even survive this? With a single command from this mutant zombie, all hidden survivors would inevitably be found and killed. Despair gripped everyone in that moment. Yet to their surprise, the mutant zombie led the 30 zombies away from their building, showing no intention of attacking them. They all breathed a long sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Liu Ruoxin was stunned to see Han Dongsheng returning to their building surrounded by a horde of zombies. What was going on? Could it be? Liu Ruoxin suddenly had a bold guess. Rumors said that some ordinary zombies, after devouring a mutant zombie's crystal, would inherit the deceased zombie's original abilities. Could it be that her zombie brother had used this method to kill the controlling mutant zombie and gained this special? At this thought, a mixture of joy and worry flashed across her face. For a moment, she was lost. Her benefactor was a zombie, and now her protector was also a zombie. If one day she led humanity to eradicate zombies, how would she face this zombie brother of hers? Sigh. Liu Ruoxin let out a long sigh, her heart filled with turmoil. Han Dongsheng ordered the zombies to scatter and gather supplies. He named the sole mutant zombie Dazhuang and had it follow him into the apartment building, guarding the door to their home. Roar, roar, roar. Han Dongsheng entered the house and excitedly greeted Liu Ruoxin. She had been torn by inner conflict, but when she saw him run over and hug her, her heart softened. No matter what, she could never harm her zombie brother. Zombies were zombies, and her zombie brother was her zombie brother. They were not the same. Having resolved her thoughts, Liu Ruoxin's mood brightened considerably. Han Dongsheng was also in high spirits. In his past life, Han Dongsheng had a younger sister who looked very much like Liu Ruoxin. As a child, he had watched helplessly as his sister died on a hospital bed, unable to do anything. He had carried that guilt for 2 lifetimes. Now, by saving Liu Ruoxin, the knot in his heart was finally untied. The 12-year-old boy, tormented by remorse, finally stepped out of his inner prison and welcomed his 13th year. Han Dongsheng ruffled Liu Ruoxin's hair, letting out soft whimpers. He now regarded her as his own blood sister, just as she saw him as her true brother. Several apartment buildings had been largely cleared by Han Dongsheng, and supplies piled up like mountains inside the unit. With so much stockpiled, he even took over the neighbor's apartment and filled it with supplies as well. According to information from his controlled zombies, one household in their building still had people inside, the top floor. He lived on the 3rd floor, and it was the penthouse that was occupied. He vaguely remembered the residents of Unit 601, a middle-aged couple. The husband was a very kind man. In the past, when Han Dongsheng was short on money, the man had generously invited him over for meals. The two families had a very good relationship. They were good to me. I can't just ignore them in danger. Han Dongsheng glanced at Liu Ruoxin. He was a zombie, and although she acted normally, there must be an unspoken barrier between them. After all, they were different species. To prevent Liu Ruoxin from developing psychological issues, he decided to let her interact more with humans. With that thought, Liu Ruoxin picked up a pen and paper and wrote a few crooked lines. Then he put on a mask and a cap to conceal his zombie identity as much as possible and went to negotiate with Brother Su and his wife upstairs. Creak. Han Dongsheng pushed open the door and stepped out of his home. Dazhuang was standing guard at the entrance. He patted Dazhuang's shoulder, then went upstairs to the door of Unit 601 of Brother Su's home. After carefully checking his attire to confirm everything was in order, he raised his hand and knocked. Knock, knock, knock. The house was dead silent. Knock, 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 knock. Han Dongsheng knocked with a rhythmic pattern. Inside the living room, a vigilant Su Hu and his wife exchanged glances and concluded that the person outside must be alive. After all, zombies were mindless monsters, no different from beasts. How could they knock with such rhythm? But to be safe, Su Hu went to the security door and peered through the peephole. After all, how could he be sure whether the visitor was a good person or a bad one? In the apocalypse, human hearts were often more terrifying than zombies. Through the peephole, Su Hu saw Han Dongsheng standing at the door. Though his face was well covered, they had known each other for over 5 years. There was no way Su Hu wouldn't recognize him. Han Dongsheng lifted the cardboard he held, on which a crooked line of text was written. Brother Su, it's me, Han Dongsheng. I found a lot of supplies. Do you need any? If you do, maybe we could live together. I'm too bored alone. Good heavens, it's hard to believe such ugly handwriting could be produced by a human. Su Hu's voice reached Han Dongsheng's ears, and standing outside the door, Han Dongsheng was left speechless upon hearing it. What a character, truly worthy of Brother Su. His words were blunt and straightforward. Su Hu knew Han Dongsheng's character well, and coupled with the fact that their supplies were no longer sufficient to sustain them for long, they did not hesitate to open the door. There was another reason in Su Hu's memory. Han Dongsheng was a slim young man, whereas he himself was a foreman who had once worked as a laborer and had never neglected his training over the years. He could easily pin Han Dongsheng to the ground and thrash him. The security door opened, and Su Hu's familiar figure appeared before Han Dongsheng. Dongsheng, I didn't expect you to be so lucky, surviving the zombie outbreak without a scratch. I thought you'd kick the bucket. Su Hu grinned and threw an arm around Han Dongsheng's shoulder, pulling him inside. In his boisterous manner, he failed to notice that Han Dongsheng's complexion was off. It was Aunt Zhao, sitting in the living room with glasses, exuding an air of culture, who noticed something was amiss with Han Dongsheng. Dongsheng, why is your complexion so poor? Have you been losing sleep over the zombie outbreak? Han Dongsheng shrugged helplessly, then sat on the sofa, took out a pen, and began writing in a notebook. Dongsheng, is something wrong with your throat? Why aren't you speaking? Su Hu was puzzled, and Han Dongsheng at that moment picked up a drawing board and wrote, I've turned into a zombie, but I haven't lost my memory. I'm now a human with a zombie's body. Having written that, he removed his mask, sunglasses, and cap, revealing his zombie-like visage. Seeing this, Su Hu let out a startled cry, while Zhao Yuha could only sigh. Alas, how did you become a zombie? That's going to make finding a wife difficult. Su Hu. Han Dongsheng. What an absurd focus. Honey Dongsheng has turned into a zombie. What's the point of worrying about that? Su Hu couldn't help but complain, but Zhao Yuha raised her hand and gave his head a sharp knock. You're so dense. Although Dongsheng has become a zombie, he still has a normal mind and memory. He can write to express his thoughts, which means he's only physically different from before. It's like the difference between a wolf and a domestic dog. Honestly, I was wondering how Han Dongsheng, who's dirt poor, could hoard enough supplies at home. Now that he's a zombie, everything makes sense. Alright. Su Hu suddenly understood, while Han Dongsheng couldn't help giving Zhao Yuha a thumbs up. So this was what a human with a functioning brain looked like in the apocalypse. Truly rare. Dongsheng, the past couple of days I've noticed zombies appearing in organized groups outside, and the epicenter is this very building. I assume you're behind that. Your aunt and I have awakened special abilities. I suspect that among zombies there might be similar beings, and your condition is the result of mutation, making you an anomaly among them. Han Dongsheng nodded, vigorously astonished that Brother Su and his wife had actually awakened legendary abilities. What a find. Was he lucky or what? Controlling zombies. Tisk Dongsheng, your potential far surpasses ours. It's just a shame that you're a zombie now. I don't have any suitable young ladies to introduce to you. But maybe some of the girls I know have turned into zombies too. I could set you up when the time comes. Zhao Yu's words left Han Dongsheng and Su Hu speechless again. What an obsession. Was she determined to play matchmaker no matter what? Han Dongsheng communicated his situation to Su Hu and his wife through writing. After learning the details, both fell into deep thought. Zhao Yuha, being the quickest of minds, spoke first. Dongsheng, your situation is unique. You are an anomaly belonging to neither the human nor the zombie camp. My suggestion is that you build your own force. Actually, your uncle and I have been discussing it for a while. My ability is telekinesis, his is strength amplification. Originally, we planned to familiarize ourselves with our abilities, gather supplies, find survivors, establish a shelter, and develop from there. You need mutant crystals to evolve. Having many helpers to collect them will greatly speed things up. Zombies are convenient, but their intelligence is severely lacking. And your ability to gather supplies is remarkable. You mustn't waste it. Zhao Yuha laid out her thoughts, and Su Hu nodded in agreement. Han Dongsheng then wrote a sentence on paper. How can a zombie like me manage a shelter? Prejudice is a mountain. People will never trust someone of a different kind. They won't accept a zombie leader. Silly child, we can manage and represent you. You just pretend your ability is controlling zombies, claim your vocal cords are damaged, cover yourself up when in public, and gradually move into the background. Zhao Yuha looked at Han Dongsheng as if he were an idiot. Han Dongsheng's eyes lit up. Right? Zhao Yuha, as a company accountant and HR manager, truly had a sharp mind. After the two humans and the zombie had settled their plans, Han Dongsheng led them to his home. Seeing the mountains of supplies piled inside, they couldn't help but exclaim, "What a difference! It's enough to make a person jealous." Meanwhile, Liu Ruoxin noticed the two newcomers and was taken aback. "Aunt Zhao, Su Hu, what are they doing here?" In her past life, Liu Ruoxin had been rescued by the survivor team formed by this couple. Later, they established the largest safe zone in Y City and were among its strongest ability users. Eventually, they died in battle alongside Liu Ruoxin against a terrifying zombie. Meeting them again now filled her with immense emotion. First the zombie brother, then Su Hu and his wife, who treated her like a daughter. Here, she had found a sin. Liu Ruoxin was stunned for a moment, then rushed to Zhao Yuha and her husband, giving them a big hug. "Hey, there's a kid here." Su Hu was puzzled while Han Dongsheng let out a series of muffled sounds trying to explain, but failing because they couldn't understand him. When would this damn zombie body let him speak normally? Han Dongsheng was inwardly frustrated, but at that moment Liu Ruoxin spoke. "The zombie brother saved me." Zombie brother. The two barely suppressed their laughter looking at Han Dongsheng. Then Zhao Yuha cheerfully told Liu Ruoxin his real name. And thus Liu Ruoxin learned her zombie brother's true name at last. Bang! Dazhuang slammed his shoulder against the security door, the metal frame groaning under the strain. Han Dongsheng felt his forehead tighten as he saw the dark tide of zombies surging from the western suburbs toward the city center. "Old Su." Zhao Yuha yanked the curtain open, her pale face reflected in the glass. "Look at the rooftop." The flashlight in Su Hu's hand clattered to the floor. He bent down to pick it up, calloused hands trembling. "That's got to be nearly 10,000. And those big ones in the back as huge as trucks." Liu Ruoxin stood on tiptoe, peering over the windowsill, then abruptly turned to dump all the books out of her backpack. As she stuffed cans into the bag, a Swiss Army knife dangled from her waist. "What are you doing, girl?" Su Hu grabbed her shoulder only to realize she was shaking. "The replication ability requires a touch, right?" Liu Ruoxin grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "Let me touch those big ones later." Han Dongsheng carved a deep mark on the cardboard. "Too dangerous. We can't outrun them." Liu Ruoxin tucked a fruit knife into her sock. "Doesn't our zombie brother have 30 minions? They make perfect cannon fodder." Zhao Yuha suddenly slapped Su Hu's back. "The drainage ditch of the Western chemical plant. Are you insane?" Su Hu grabbed 3 chess pieces and slammed them on the coffee table. "Just as cripples and weaklings." Han Dongsheng kicked the door panel. Dazhuang growled from outside. 5 Zhao Yuha counted on her fingers. Plus 30 who are ready to die. The wind grew shrill. Han Dongsheng saw Liu Ruoxin slyly tuck a second knife into her waistband, and Su Hu wrapping his trembling right hand with his tie. "Back in the army." Su Hu stopped abruptly, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Girl, stay close to Aunt Zhao later." Zhao Yu's hand was steady as she poured boiling water into a thermos. "Forget it, you stay close to me." "Dongsheng, did you bring the writing board?" Han Dongsheng held up the plastic board covered in bite marks, its crooked handwriting like crawling worms. 20 minions went to the chemical plant to pour gasoline. "What a sin." Su Hu cracked his knuckles, sweat dripping down his beard. Zhao Yuha shoved the thermos into his arms. The hot water splashed on his hand without him noticing. Outside, the window howls erupted from all directions. Dazhuang suddenly started banging his head against the door. Han Dongsheng sensed the 30 zombies gathering outside the chemical plant wall. Liu Ruoxin pulled out a small notebook and scribbled frantically, the pencil tip punching holes through the paper. Drink some water first. Zhao Yuha pressed the thermos into Su He's hand. Your hand's shaking like a sieve. Liu Ruoxin suddenly grabbed Zhao Yu's clothes so tightly the fabric turned white. Aunt Zhao. Her voice quivered as she pointed into the distance. Dark shapes swarmed on the roof of an unfinished building, pressing down like a storm cloud. One figure plunged from the 7th floor, flattening a car with a crash, then staggered back to its feet. Han Dongsheng crouched on top of a newspaper stand, his nails scraping the metal with a screech. Over 30 signal sources clamored in his mind. He shook his head in irritation. Dongsheng says to go to the back gate of the chemical plant, Zhao Yuha said, pressing her temple. He just shouted it in my head. Suhu grinned. Well, now we've got a wireless walkie-talkie. A squad of zombies darted through the alley, led by a delivery man in a yellow uniform, dragging a leaking motorcycle, sparks flying from the exhaust. Go. Suhu hoisted Liu Ruoxin onto his shoulder. You'll get to touch a big one later. The chemical plant's iron gate boomed as the zombie horde slammed against it. Han Dongsheng rolled a gasoline barrel. The smell of gas on his sleeve reminded him of his days working at a gas station when a full tank cost just over 200. Zombie brother. A figure caked in mud slid out of a vent, Liu Ruoxin's sneakers sparking on the metal. Zhao Yu's thermos hovered in midair, checker pieces clattering out. Dongsheng, count to 3. Her molars clenched. Han Dongsheng raised 3 fingers. When the first finger bent, Suhu punched the fire hydrant, sending a 3-meter geyser of water into the air. When the second finger bent, Liu Ruoxin launched herself like a cannonball at the 3-meturtle mutated zombie, the Swiss Army knife glinting in the sunlight. I touched it. She hung from the zombie's leg like a living pendant. The mutated zombie shook its leg, nearly flinging the girl into the drainage ditch. Just as Han Dongsheng was about to bend his third finger, Dazhuang suddenly climbed over the wall, clutching half a burning motorcycle exhaust pipe. You mother! Su He's curse was cut short as the exhaust pipe arced toward the gasoline barrel. The last finger bent halfway, and the checker piece spun into the oil trench. Boom! Flames shot up along the gasoline trail, the heat blast sending Han Dongsheng's cap flying 3 meters high. He reached for it only to see Liu Ruoxin hanging like a koala from the mutated zombie's ribs, legs flailing. I touched it. I touched it. The girl's shrill voice pierced the explosion. Suhu, whipping a fire hose, nearly twisted his back. Girl, what are you grabbing at? In the distance, Zhao Yu's voice came out in a distorted shriek. Han Dongsheng turned to see a zombie with yellow teeth lunging at her back, and he twisted open the fire hydrant. The high-pressure water jet sent the zombie flying backward, its crotch catching fire as it crashed into the flames. Cough. This haul was worth it. Liu Ruoxin emerged from the smoke, her face black as coal. She whipped out her notebook and scribbled furiously, Bones Pike type, strength boost duration. Before she could finish, the entire street's windows rattled in unison. Amidst the cacophony of howls, 3 silhouettes over 2 meters tall cleaved through the zombie horde. The lead Bones Pike zombie casually flipped a car, its roof peeling away like paper. Damn it. Su He's canteen hit the ground, spilling most of the water. He stared at the reflective metal shard on the Bones Pike zombie's knee, a cleaver handle embedded in its flesh. Zhao Yuha grabbed Han Dongsheng's sleeve. How many of the 30 minions are left? Han Dongsheng held up 7 fingers. At that moment, Dazhuang crawled through a gap in the wall, gripping half a smoking exhaust pipe. You son of a... Su He's curse was drowned by the explosion. Liu Ruoxin was already sprinting low, the Swiss Army knife clenched between her teeth like a feral kitten. The Bones Pike zombie suddenly turned toward them. The 7 signal sources in Han Dongsheng's mind shrieked simultaneously. He kicked over a gasoline barrel, the rolling drum crushing Liu Ruoxin's dropped pencil case. Colored pencils crackled in the flames, reflecting eerie rainbow light in the zombie's pupils. Run! Zhao Yuha hurled the thermos at the Bones Pike zombie's face. The boiling water made it stagger. Suhu seized the chance to swing the fire hose, but it tangled around Dazhuang's neck. Han Dongsheng grabbed the burning checkerboard and threw it into the oil trench. The second explosion blasted him 2 meters away, crushing 3 boxes of chalk upon landing. Colorful powder flew into the air, muffling the howls behind him. Old Su Ruoxin got stuck on the tree. Zhao Yu's thermos flask arced through the air, splattering a plume of black blood when it struck the Bonespur zombie. Suhu kicked away a lunging zombie, but his cloth shoe's sole got wedged between some poor soul's ribs. Hopping on one foot, he turned and saw Liu Ruoxin clinging like a koala to the Bonespur zombie's waist, her short legs flailing in the air. Copy succeeded. Liu Ruoxin had barely cheered when she tripped over a flung motorcycle wreck. Han Dongsheng commanded 2 zombies to dive in as cushions, but all 3 bodies tumbled into a heap, crushing a mess of colorful chalk on the ground. The Bonespur zombie suddenly froze. A hissing sound of a gas pipe came from beneath its feet. Zhao Yi's telekinesis lifted a lighter half a meter into the air, then she abruptly turned her head. Old Su, your canteen. Only then did Su Hu realize his military canteen had rolled to where the gas was leaking. He dove forward, finally wrenching his cloth shoe free from the zombie's ribs, but a bone spur slashed his crotch in midair. Holy shit. The blast wave knocked him over as he frantically clutched his torn pants. Liu Ruoxin crawled out from the pile of zombies and suddenly found a severed rotting finger in her pocket. She yelped and flung it into the fire. Did you sneak that in, zombie brother? Su Hu stood up holding his torn trousers and grabbed a severed fire hydrant. Watched the old man's three-pointer. The steel pipe pierced 3 zombies and finally plunged into the bone spur zombie's eye socket, with a wet thud splattering pus and blood all over Zhao Yi's face. Su Hu. Zhao Yuha wiped her face and hurled her thermos at her husband's head. In the distance, howls erupted one after another as the remaining horde began to scatter. Han Dongsheng counted 30 underlings reduced to 5. De Zhuang was crawling this way, dragging a smoking exhaust pipe. Liu Ruoxin suddenly raised her notebook, recording a new ability. Bone spur form lasts 3 minutes. The side effect is. Before she could finish, Zhao Yuha grabbed her by the collar and yanked her aside. A half-meter-long bone spur erupted exactly where she had been standing. Survive first, then do science. Su Hu caught up. Han Dongsheng commanded the last 5 zombies to cover the rear, while he hoisted Liu Ruoxin and ran. Dust rising from the rubble made Liu Ruoxin cough. She held the severed finger up to her eyes and examined it closely. The finger's surface was covered in a hardened keratinized shell, and the nail had mutated into a sharp bone spur. The roar of the zombie horde suddenly became chaotic. Han Dongsheng counted the zombies he could still control, exactly 11. He tried to line them up in 3 rows, but the leading zombie tripped over its own feet and fell flat on its face. Liu Ruoxin tiptoed and patted his shoulder. Zombie brother, look. She pointed at the iron roof panel spiraling down from the sky. When 10 zombies stacked themselves into a 3-layer cushion to catch the panel, a sharp pain stabbed through Han Dongsheng's brain. De Zhuang crawled out from the rubble with a broken arm. Black pus dripped onto the ground with a sizzling, corroding sound. What is it going to do? Liu Ruoxin hid behind Zhao Yuha. De Zhuang scraped a rebar against the concrete floor, creating sparks, then abruptly turned and jammed the rebar into the crack in the bone spur zombie's knee. The moment the bone spur zombie fell to its knees, Liu Ruoxin scrambled onto its back like a monkey. Zhao Yi's thermos slammed into the zombie's forehead with a dull thud. Got it. Liu Ruoxin slapped the bone spurs with her little hands. Huh. No reaction. Su Hu rushed over holding his pants. Silly girl. You're touching its butt. Han Dongsheng commanded the last 2 zombies to leap onto the bone spur zombie and pin its head down. De Zhuang suddenly let out a roar and raised half a street lamp pole with its one arm. Is it rebelling? Su Hu grabbed a brick from the ground. The street lamp pole crashed down, and the bone spur zombie's head exploded like a watermelon. Black blood splashed all over Liu Ruoxin's face. She wiped it and found a shard of crystal core stuck to her palm. Jackpot! Her voice trembled, but before she could finish, Zhao Yuha grabbed her by the collar and dragged her away. 3 bone spurs shot up from the exact spot where she had been standing. De Zhuang swayed twice and crashed to the ground. When Han Dongsheng ran over, he saw that the creature's remaining left hand was still frozen in a thumbs-up gesture. The bone spur zombie crazily thrashed its head. Liu Ruoxin clung desperately to its bone spurs, her entire body swinging into the air. Han Dongsheng immediately issued an order. 3 zombies piled onto the creature like building blocks, their rotting fingers plunging into its eye sockets in unison. Seizing the opportunity, De Zhuang swung the rebar with a whistling sound, shattering half of the bone spur zombie's skull with a clang. Old Su, watch out! Zhao Yi's voice cracked. Su Hu had wrapped a fire hose around the leg of a giant zombie, and he was being dragged across the concrete floor, his army boots screeching against the ground. Dongsheng, have your brothers pull the other end. Han Dongsheng suddenly sensed more than 30 faint signals flickering in his mental link. The shattered zombie remnants were twitching and reassembling. With a thought, the broken zombies immediately grabbed the other end of the hose and pulled like a tug-of-war team. As Zhao Yuha used her telekinesis to lift a chunk of asphalt, Liu Ruoxin rolled to the roadside, still clutching half a bone spur in her hand. She saw De Zhuang dragging its broken arm toward the giant zombie, raising a car exhaust pipe with its single limb. Bam! The moment the exhaust pipe plunged into the ear hole, Han Dongsheng's mind exploded with fragments of De Zhuang's memories. Sunlight at the entrance of the apartment building, the sausage Liu Ruoxin secretly gave it the sensation of rotting flesh falling off when he first patted its shoulder. Old Su left. Zhao Yuha shouted only to realize her husband was being pinned to the hood of a car by 3 zombies. Liu Ruoxin's knuckles turned white. When she grabbed a half-length rebar, she found it had bent into a shape, the after effect of copying Su Hu's ability. Don't do anything stupid. Zhao Yi's telekinesis only managed to tear off half of her shirt hem. Han Dongsheng's vision suddenly turned blood-red. He saw De Zhuang chewing on the giant zombie's ankle, with its teeth black blood from its broken arm corroding the ground. Images of 37 zombies dying looped in his mind. He let out a roar, and the 3 zombies lunging at Liu Ruoxin slammed to a halt, one of them falling onto its back, with all 4 limbs in the air. Liu Ruoxin seized the chance and shoved the rebar into the nearest zombie's nostril. Take that. As she twisted the rebar, she noticed the zombie was trembling. Han Dongsheng felt his control ability surging. All the scattered remains suddenly twitched and stood up, severed hands grabbed severed legs, assembling into a crooked, staggering undead army. De Zhuang's broken body suddenly gave a thumbs up and slowly collapsed into the rubble. The zombie with only half a head clamped its teeth onto the bone spur zombie's tail, rotting flesh dropping off in flakes as it was dragged along. Suhu shook off half an ear stuck to his boot sole. His military canteen swayed at his waist. Dongsheng, your zombie brothers are pretty loyal. Zhao Yi's thermos arced through the air, its surface now bearing a few more tooth marks. She suddenly grabbed Su Hu's shoulder. Old Su. The iron roof of the gas station was screeching as it scraped along. The escaped mutant zombie was crawling along the ceiling less than 3 meters away from Liu Ruoxin. A bizarre grin twisted Han Dongsheng's lips. His decayed vocal cords emitted a clicking sound. He raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. More than 20 zombie remains exploded simultaneously, raining a shower of black blood and bone fragments onto the mutant zombie's head. Liu Ruoxin seized the chance to pounce, her sneakers slipping on the oil tank. Watch out. Su Hu's warning got stuck in his throat. The little girl, agile as a monkey, climbed onto the mutated zombie's back in a few moves only to be flung off. Han Dongsheng extended his arms to catch the little cannonball falling from the sky. Liu Ruoxin wriggled in Han Dongsheng's arms, and in her open palm lay half a crystal core. Zombie brother, she shook the crystal core. I think I upgraded the ability you gave me. The crystal core glowed faintly in her hand, casting an eerie blue light on Han Dongsheng's pallid skin. Suhu walked over and said, Girl, who did you learn that sneaky trick from? Zhao Yuha slapped him on the back of the head. Don't teach the kid bad things. She turned to Han Dongsheng, the thermos floating in midair. Dongsheng, how much can you control now? Han Dongsheng raised one finger and drew 50 on the ground. Liu Ruoxin suddenly jumped up. Look. The mutated zombie smeared with rotting flesh was twitching, and the half-zombie arm, hanging on its bone spikes, suddenly gave a thumbs up. Suhu threw out his water flask, and Zhao Yuha caught it only to find it was a bottle of toilet cleaner. Are you using this as a weapon? She nearly crushed the bottle. A metallic snapping sound came from above. Liu Ruoxin's shoe was stuck in an air conditioner unit dangling. She held up a crystal core covered in chewing gum and yelled to Han Dongsheng. De Zhuang hit it. The zombie king's rotten eyeballs suddenly turned toward the sound. Han Dongsheng yanked the fire hose tight, the metal connector scraping sparks against the zombie king's ankle. The delivery zombie charged forward, holding a leaking electric battery fluid trailing black marks on the ground. Run to the chemical plant. Zhao Yi's thermos hit the zombie king behind its ear, the teeth marks on the bottom clearly visible. Suhu tore open his shirt to bandage his wound, his face turning green when he saw the words XX Feed Factory on it. This damn shirt. Before he finished, he saw Liu Ruoxin's curious gaze. Han Dongsheng's nape suddenly burned, and the number in his vision jumped to 99. De Zhuang's mutilated jaw still clung tenaciously to the zombie king's back, just like the stray dog that had chased after a car last week. When the bone whip swept past, Han Dongsheng felt 3 of his teeth loosen. He suddenly remembered the dentist appointment Zhao Yuha had been nagging about, and now he wouldn't have to go after all. Catched. Liu Ruoxin shoved the crystal core into his mouth. The taste of strawberry mixed with rust exploded on his tongue. Han Dongsheng's finger bones suddenly elongated, and when his claws pierced through the zombie king's chest, black blood splattered all over the vending machine. Soda cans burst one after another, drenching the zombie king's head in orange soda. Suhu swung a fire axe, the safety production model award certificate on the handle flapping noisily. Zhao Yuha grabbed Liu Ruoxin's braid duck. The little girl's bow brushed past the bone whip and floated lightly into the smoking battery fluid. A half-bone spike grazed her hair tips, piercing the signboard of the lottery station straight through. Han Dongsheng's t-shirt suddenly split open, the newborn bone spikes stretching the fabric into a fishing net. Liu Ruoxin pointed at his back. Zombie brother, your clothes. Han Dongsheng looked down to see his exposed ribs and silently pulled his jacket zipper up to his chin. The chemical plant's iron door suddenly clanged loudly. Over 30 zombie remains were hobbling toward him, and one zombie, missing half its head, even gave him a thumbs up. Flesh buds wriggled in the gaping hole in the zombie king's chest. When Han Dongsheng grabbed a shared bike, the seat snapped with a crack. He swung the bicycle chain around the zombie king's neck, the rusted chain emitting a harsh scraping sound. Old Su. Zhao Yuha suddenly kicked Suhu. What did you just splash? Suhu looked at the empty bottle in his hand. The skull symbol on it was especially conspicuous. Looks like pesticide. Liu Ruoxin suddenly pulled out a lighter from her pocket. Want to try it? Her eyes were frighteningly bright. Han Dongsheng snatched the lighter and pointed at her bulging pocket. What else have you hidden? The little girl mysteriously pulled out a handful of colorful candies. I snagged them from the vending machine. The zombie king suddenly let out a roar. Han Dongsheng felt an extra voice in his mind, hungry. He froze for a moment, then turned to ask Liu Ruoxin, did you hear something? Liu Ruoxin stuffed a candy into her mouth and said indistinctly, it said it's hungry. Zhao Yu's thermos clattered to the ground. It can talk. Suhu picked up the cup and found another teeth mark on the bottom. Suhu looked at the toilet cleaner label on the military canteen and with a jittery hand splashed half a meter off target. This damn thing looks way too much like insecticide. Liu Ruoxin suddenly lunged at the zombie king's ankle. As her replication ability activated, the zombie king stumbled and crushed a soda crate. Orange-flavored bubbles sprayed all over her face. The little girl spat out foam, clutching a bluish crystal shard. Jackpot. And Zhao, look. The tumor on the zombie king's right chest throbbed violently. As Han Dongsheng threw Liu Ruoxin to Suhu, he heard Zhao Yuha shout, it's hard is. I know. Han Dongsheng punched into the zombie king's left chest. The sound of shattering glass came from the rotting flesh. His arm was caught by wriggling ribs, and a screech like a pressure cooker releasing steam came from the zombie king's chest cavity. Liu Ruoxin grabbed his arm and shoved the crystal shard into his mouth. Swallow it. The instant the shard dissolved, Han Dongsheng's back shirt was torn open by newborn bone spikes. When the zombie king exploded into flying, minced flesh, a piece of skull clanged into a pancake stall's iron pot 300 meters away. Suhu walked over on broken glass, a coupon stuck to the milk tea stain under his military boot fluttering. Han Dongsheng tried to give a thumbs up, but his fractured middle finger stubbornly stuck up. Zombie brother is cursing. Liu Ruoxin giggled, covering her mouth. The zombie king's minced flesh on the ground began to wriggle. Zhao Yuha used her psychokinesis to push aside the rotting meat. The crystal core is reforming. Han Dongsheng stared at the bluish veins on the back of his hand. Old Su water flask. Half a canteen of sour stuff. Suhu tossed the flask over. Going to offer incense to this thing? The moment water splashed onto the crystal core, the zombie king's remains began to twitch. Han Dongsheng twitched the corner of his mouth. Electrolyte reaction, my thesis. How many spicy sticks can these trade for? Liu Ruoxin squatted, counting crystal shards, her little finger pointing one by one. Dark shadows gathered in the distance. Suhu's Adam's apple bobbed. Another group's coming. Han Dongsheng cracked his neck, his fractured middle finger clicking back into place. What, haven't had enough? Liu Ruoxin tugged at his shirt. Zombie brother, your nails are long enough to open a soda can. Zhao Yu's thermos clattered to the ground. Dongsheng, your back. Through the gaps in the torn t-shirt, the newborn bone spikes glinted coldly. Han Dongsheng touched his back, and suddenly noticed Liu Ruoxin, standing on tiptoe, trying to touch his bone spikes. He quickly stepped back 2 paces. Just one touch. Liu Ruoxin insisted. Suhu suddenly grabbed a half-mop stick from the ground. Touch it later, deal with this group first. The new zombie horde had closed in to within 20 meters. The leading zombie wore a bloodstained security uniform, and carried a half-electrical baton in its hand. Han Dongsheng flexed his wrist, the newborn bone spikes scratching across a metal box, leaving a clear mark. They'll handle this. Han Dongsheng stepped in front of everyone. You all rest. Liu Ruoxin suddenly pulled something out of her pocket. Wait. She held up a pack of spicy sticks. I can use this as bait. Suhu and Zhao Yuha exchanged glances, and in unison they both held their foreheads. The zombie horde had closed to within 15 meters. The faint azure glow in Han Dongsheng's palm grew increasingly intense. A remnant of the crystal shard he had swallowed earlier, its energy rampaging through his limbs and spine. An electric current seemed to surge through his spine, an unbearable itch deep within the bone joints creaking and crackling, as if something were about to burst through his flesh and emerge. He couldn't help but throw his head back and roar, a sound utterly inhuman. As his arms slashed through the air, a bizarre sight unfolded. Within a kilometer radius, every wandering zombie, and everyone charging toward them, froze in their tracks. 100 chaotic consciousnesses churned like a boiling stew in his mind. 10 among them stood out sharply, the mutated zombies flickering like ghost fires in the dark night. This ability was even more powerful than he had imagined. Holy crap! Suhu's eyes practically bulged out, and the mop handle in his hand wobbled, nearly slipping from his grip. Han Dongsheng shook his hand, and from between his fingers bone spikes an inch long protruded, cutting through the air with a faint whistling sound. He lazily crooked a finger at the leading security guard zombie. The once ferocious horde of zombies, as if hit by a pause button, came to an abrupt halt 10 meters away, none daring to advance further. The security guard zombie dragged its crackling electric baton, its head tilted sizing up Han Dongsheng. On its rotting face there even appeared a hint of confusion. "Dongsheng, watch out." Zhao Yuha shouted, her psychic power, lifting a discarded bicycle wheel into the air ready to hurl it at any moment. "This one's not right." Liu Ruoxin stood on tiptoe tugging at the torn corner of Han Dongsheng's clothes with her small hand. "Corpse brother, how about I try using spicy sticks?" Before Han Dongsheng could stop her, the little girl deftly tore open a pack of spicy sticks, and the rich, pungent aroma exploded in the air. She pinched a glossy, spicy stick and waved it toward the horde, even imitating the gestures she'd seen on TV. "Come eat, they're delicious." The horde remained dead silent. Even the security guard zombie merely tilted its head again, its hollow eye sockets fixed on the direction of the spicy stick, showing no reaction at all. "What gives? Aren't zombies supposed to be foodies?" Liu Ruoxin pouted, shoved the spicy stick back into her mouth, and mumbled indistinctly, "Do they only eat brains now?" "Silly girl, put that away." Suhu yanked her behind him, his face dark. "Something's wrong. They're about to charge." No sooner had he spoken than the security guard zombie raised its arm and pointed its shattered baton forward. The horde behind it surged like water from a burst dam. With a quick shift of his will, Han Dongsheng's 100 controlled zombies howled and rushed to meet them. Two filthy tides slammed into each other with tremendous force. With a flick of his wrist, Han Dongsheng's bone spikes shot out, instantly piercing the throats of 3 enemy zombies that had leaped toward him. But that security guard zombie was truly sinister. Brandishing its electric baton, it was actually directing those mindless creatures to adjust their formation, gradually encircling them. "Old Su!" Zhao Yuha cried out sharply. Her psychic power burst forth, lifting 3 zombies with invisible force and smashing them heavily against the nearby wall, where they slid down like mud. Suhu delivered a clean side kick, his combat boot, smashing the jaw off a zombie with a loud thud, sending rotten teeth and black blood flying. "Damn it! Someone's controlling these things from behind." The 100 signals in Han Dongsheng's mind flashed wildly. He vaguely sensed somewhere farther away a stronger consciousness lurking. The chilling aura made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Liu Ruoxin hid beside Suha's leg, her little notebook open, pencil scratching quickly. Security guard zombie, suspected intelligent type, command ability, tentatively rated class. The pencil pressed too hard, piercing straight through the paper. The battle suddenly became a stalemate. Han Dongsheng's bone spikes flew, shredding 5 or 6 more zombies, but his own minions were rapidly dwindling. The security guard zombie directed the horde with a war of attrition, constantly filling the gaps with fresh zombies clearly intent on wearing him down. Thump! Thump! The ground began to tremble slightly, and the vibrations grew stronger and stronger. "What the hell is that?" Zhao Yuha pointed at the distant street corner. Her precious thermos spun around her, ready to be launched like a cannonball at any moment. Dust billowed at the corner, and a massive creature burst out, moving at astonishing speed. It resembled a giant skinned dog, at least 2 meters tall at the shoulder, its muscles bulging like stones packed under the skin. The rotting hide hung in tatters, with only a few clumps of filthy black fur remaining along its spine and the base of its tail. "Mutated dog." Suhu squeezed the mop handle until it creaked. Liu Ruoxin's face turned deathly pale, in an instant her voice trembling. "No, it's an abomination. In my past life, that thing was 10 times more troublesome than a mutated zombie." The giant abomination dog ignored friend and foe alike, plunging straight into the chaotic melee of zombies, opening its enormous maw and biting wildly. 3 zombies were instantly torn to pieces, black blood spraying everywhere. Its movements were so fast they left only afterimages, and the bulging muscles on its body pulsed with each stride, making one's scalp crawl just to look at it. Han Dongsheng instinctively tried to use his mental power to control it. A piercing, bone-deep pain stabbed deep into his brain. His vision went black, and he nearly collapsed. Control failed, and it backlashed. "Corpse brother." Liu Ruoxin quickly steadied him. "You can't control an abomination. They're not on the same evolutionary path as zombies." The giant abomination dog suddenly pivoted, locking onto the living humans. 2 flickering azure ghost lights danced in its rotting eye sockets, and its thick claws scraped the concrete floor with a piercing screech. Han Dongsheng gritted his teeth and steadied himself, enduring the excruciating pain in his head as he continued to command his remaining minions to surround the abomination dog. The shirt on his back completely split apart as rows of razor-sharp bone spikes fully extended, tearing through his jacket, gleaming with a cold white light in the dimness. "Dongsheng, don't be reckless." Suhu shouted anxiously. "That beast can't be stopped by ordinary zombie." A guttural roar escaped Han Dongsheng's throat. The bones in his left arm twisted, and deformed bone spikes proliferated and elongated wildly, and in the blink of an eye they transformed into a grotesque bone spear. The stench of the abomination dog rushed at him. Han Dongsheng sidestepped, sharply thrusting the bone spear forward in one fluid motion. The spear tip sliced across the abomination's flank, drawing a spray of spurting black blood. Where the black blood landed on the ground, it hissed and bubbled, giving off white smoke, corroding small pits into the concrete. "And Zhao, use that move from last time." Liu Ruoxin suddenly pulled another small crystal shard from her pocket and held it up. Zhao Yuha understood immediately. Her psychic power locked onto the shard, and it shot forth with precision, flying straight into the abomination dog's remaining eye socket. The shard plunged into the orbit. The abomination dog let out an ear-splitting howl of agony, thrashing its massive head wildly. Now was the moment. Han Dongsheng's legs exploded with force, propelling him upward like a cannonball. Midair, two sharp bone spurs snapped out from his knees, driving viciously into the aberrant dog's spine. A woo! The aberrant dog yelped in pain, rolling on the ground in an attempt to throw him off. Han Dongsheng clawed at the tangle of rotting flesh on its neck, his nails digging deep into the meat. By then, Su Hu had come to his senses. His crude fighting style proved surprisingly agile as he dashed forward in 3 quick strides, wound up the mop handle, and drove it straight into the aberrant dog's remaining intact eye socket. "Die, you bastard." The aberrant dog went berserk, its 2 powerful hind legs kicking off the ground with immense force, sending Han Dongsheng on its back, and Su Hu beside it, flying a dozen meters away. In midair, Han Dongsheng twisted his waist to forcibly adjust his posture. Just before landing, the bone spurs on his fingers elongated abruptly and plunged deep into the aberrant dog's exposed chest cavity. "Roar meat." A slurred yet insatiably greedy roar forced its way out of the aberrant dog's. The voice was hoarse, laden with an inhuman avarice that sent chills down the spines of everyone present. Zhao Yi's thermos clattered to the ground, rolling a few times before she even noticed. Su Hu instinctively pulled Liu Ruoxin behind him. The stench-laden wind blasted against them as the massive fang-studded maw nearly pressed against Han Dongsheng's face. Putrid saliva dripped down, sizzling faintly as it burned his skin. In a flash of lightning, Han Dongsheng's arm bone spurs pierced straight through the aberrant dog's throat. Black blood erupted. The aberrant dog let out a dying wail, a screech so sharp it pierced eardrums. "Master is coming." Its massive body convulsed violently a few times before crashing heavily to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. "Run!" Liu Ruoxin's voice shot up, choked with tears. "It's going to explode." Beneath the skin of the aberrant dog's corpse, vast patches of eerie blue luminescence suddenly flared and spread rapidly. Han Dongsheng scooped up Liu Ruoxin and turned to flee. Su Hu reacted quickly, grabbing Zhao Yuha and following close behind. Boom! The deafening explosion swallowed everything. A scorching blast wave mixed with rubble and putrid fluids slammed into the backs of the 4. Han Dongsheng instinctively hunched his body, shielding Liu Ruoxin in his arms. Amid the searing pain, he felt the bones in his back twist and stretch. Something pushed through his skin and clothes, stubbornly shouldering most of the impact. The thunderous roar gradually subsided. Han Dongsheng set Liu Ruoxin down and staggered his vision. After controlling over 100 zombies suffering mental backlash and now bearing the brunt of the explosion, he felt as if he were falling apart. On the ground lay only a pool of steaming blue viscous liquid emitting a pungent odor. Suspended at the center of the liquid was a crystal core the size of a fist, deep, cerulean, and shimmering with an ominous sheen. A second-tier crystal core. Liu Ruoxin's small face flashed between shock and ecstasy. Han Dongsheng wanted to walk over, but his legs gave way. "Zombie brother." Liu Ruoxin supported his tottering frame. Her small hands were ice cold. "I'm fine." Han Dongsheng tried to comfort her, but only a hoarse rasp escaped his throat. "Don't overdo it." Zhao Yuha approached, carefully levitating the second-tier crystal core with her telekinesis and offering it to Han Dongsheng. Su Hu poked the blue puddle with a salvaged steel pipe, frowning. "What the hell is this thing?" "An aberrant." Liu Ruoxin flipped open her precious notebook, pointing at the scribbled records. In the last life these were rare, but even a single one was harder to deal with than a 5th-tier zombie. That one just now was probably just a cub. A cub, and it was this fierce. Su Hu's throat went dry. Just as he was about to ask, "Then what would an adult be like?" a long, resonant howl laden with oppressive authority echoed from deep within the city. The howl seemed to carry tangible force, shaking the shattered glass on the ground until it hummed. Han Dongsheng jerked his head up. His gaze pierced through the swirling dust and collapsed buildings, settling on the rooftop of the tallest skyscraper in the city center. A blurry silhouette slowly straightened like a deity looking down upon ants. Even though it was several kilometers away, that icy, overwhelming pressure transmitted clearly, causing the newly formed bone structures on Han Dongsheng's back to ache with a dull throb. "It's him." Liu Ruoxin's voice trembled uncontrollably. Han Dongsheng clenched his fist, the bone spurs between his fingers protruding and retracting, then protruding again. He suddenly understood that this apocalypse ran far deeper than he had imagined. Not far off, that security guard zombie that had been beaten down was unsteadily rising to its feet once more. It no longer attacked. Instead, it tilted its head, its hollow eye sockets, gazing toward the skyscraper. At the tip of the battered stun baton in its hand, a faint blue light flickered, subtly resonating with the aura emanating from the silhouette on the distant rooftop. Security guard zombie. Zhao Yuha looked at Liu Ruoxin. You said it could command. Does that mean someone or something is pulling the strings from behind? Su Hu's voice came out hoarse. Under Zhao Yu's telekinetic lift, the second-tier crystal core vibrated slightly, emitting a low hum as if answering a call from afar. Han Dongsheng tightened his grip on Liu Ruoxin's small hand, feeling her tremble as well. The energy inside him continued to churn. The Corpse King's core he had swallowed earlier was still reshaping his body. Bones were mutating, power was increasing, but the mental exhaustion was impossible to hide. Zombie brother, Liu Ruoxin looked up at him. Are you growing wings on your back? Han Dongsheng reached back instinctively. His touch met something hard and cold. The bone spurs on his back had somehow fused and deformed, forming the rudimentary shape of a pair of ferocious bone wings. He tried to move them, but they felt sluggish and unwieldy. This newly born power was far from under him. Just then the security guard zombie turned around, and leading the remaining zombie horde silently disappeared into the rubble-strewn street like an ebbing tide. They ran. Su Hu was bewildered. Not ran. Liu Ruoxin's small face was taut, her eyes fixed on the distant tower. They've been called back. A bigger trouble is coming. The dust gradually settled. The eerie blue liquid spread across the ground, still seeping outward slowly. At the center of the puddle, the fist-sized crystal core glowed faintly, pulsing irregularly, as if something were breathing inside it. Liu Ruoxin practically lunged forward, pulling out her notebook and scribbling, muttering to herself. Aberrant crystal core properties, unknown energy fluctuations far exceeding ordinary mutants. Snap! The pencil tip broke. Oh no, she cried in frustration. Su Hu thumped the worn mop handle against the ground, producing a dull thud. Listen kid, this thing isn't going anywhere. Let's figure out where we're heading first. Zhao Yuha said nothing, only staring at the bubbling blue liquid. The thermos she never let go of spun a couple of times between her fingers, adding a few more scratches to its surface. It spoke just now. That wasn't a roar, it was slurred syllables laced with greed. This isn't an ordinary mutation, she added, her voice turning grave. Han Dongsheng ignored their discussion. He laboriously moved his back where a tearing, swollen pain radiated. The newly grown spiky wing-like growths were heavy and sluggish, completely unresponsive. Just then a faint yet distinct pulse traveled from beneath his feet, climbing up through his bones and surging straight into his chaotic consciousness. Something deep underground was calling. He picked up a piece of shattered billboard and with effort scratched on it with his bone spurs. Subway line, S below, there's something. Subway. Su Hu's brows knitted into a knot. That godforsaken place. Going in is like being in a tin can. If it's blocked, there's nowhere to run. Liu Ruoxin abruptly lifted her head. Exactly. It's the subway. Mutated creatures seek places that suit them. Underground, dark, damp. In my previous life, the subway lines were full of the most troublesome monsters. Her little notebook was clutched tightly. Zhao Yu's thermos cup paused midair. High risk, but the rewards might be high too. What Dongsheng sensed. It's likely something good. Let's go. Liu Ruoxin said decisively, her little hand clutching the newly acquired crystal core fragment. Zombie brother needs energy. He has to get stronger. From the distant ruins came faint zombie howls, hoarser than before, carrying an indescribable oppression. Su Hu hoisted the half-length steel pipe onto his shoulder and spat. Damn it, let's go. Might as well let those brainless things scout the way again. Han Dongsheng moved his mind slightly. The remaining dozens of zombie minions, as if receiving a silent command, howled and scattered, staggering toward the subway station, acting as mobilized and cannon fodder. The four of them moved swiftly under the cover of buildings, cautiously detouring around several areas obviously teeming with zombies. The entrance to West City subway station had collapsed crookedly, leaving only the character Shi from Xiqing Station. Two zombies in subway uniforms loitered near the entrance. Han Dongsheng raised a hand. The two zombies suddenly froze, then like marionettes turned around and shuffled slowly, one step at a time, into the nearby shadows. Your ability is getting creepier and creepier, Zhao Yuha murmured as she watched. Inside the subway station, it was pitch black, with only the emergency lights flickering faint green, barely illuminating anything. A thick stench of rancid fish mixed with mold hit them, nauseating almost to the point of vomiting. Su Hu turned on his flashlight. The dim yellow beam pierced the darkness, illuminating the dried black bloodstains on the floor and several overturned suitcases, their contents scattered. It's too quiet, Su Hu whispered, his light beam sweeping cautiously around, signaling everyone to move. Liu Ruoxin suddenly pointed at the wall beside them, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly. That hat. What's that? The flashlight moved over. On the wall was a thick, slippery, sticky layer gleaming with an oily sheen and undulating slightly. This substance spread like a web covering the entire wall and even extending to the ceiling and floor. Fungal mat. Liu Ruoxin quickly pulled masks from her bag and handed one to each person. Don't touch it. It's toxic. In my previous life, this stuff was everywhere underground, created by some mutated fungus. As they descended the slime-covered escalator, the rotting stench nearly became tangible, thick and unbreakable. Han Dongsheng abruptly stopped, raised a rigid hand, and made a stop gesture behind him. Zhao Yuha immediately understood, her voice tense. Something's coming. A sticky, dragging footstep came from the dark depths, like bare feet treading on a wet floor. Suhu instantly turned off the flashlight. The four pressed themselves against the wall, holding their breath. Heavy, coarse breathing echoed through the empty platform, growing closer, mixed with the grating noise of nails scraping concrete. Through the zombie minion lurking in the shadows, Han Dongsheng's consciousness saw that thing. A stooped humanoid monster covered in mud-like tumorous protrusions, some still faintly pulsating. Its eye sockets were two empty cavities, but its nose was abnormally swollen like a purplish-black tumor. Two long, constantly writhing tentacles emerged from its nostrils, twitching nervously in the air, probing the surroundings. It's a blind one. Liu Ruoxin's voice was extremely low, squeezed through gritted teeth. It relies on hearing and smell. Don't make a sound. The blind zombie suddenly stopped less than 20 meters away. Its swollen nose twitched violently a few times, and the two tentacles abruptly turned toward their hiding spot. Han Dongsheng's mind raced. He immediately ordered a zombie minion lurking at the corner of another passage to make some noise. Clang! A crisp metallic clatter rang out abruptly. The blind one's massive body shuddered, then immediately turned and charged toward the source of the sound like a raging bull. Then came a teeth-grinding, tearing sound and a wet, chewing sound. Under the faint emergency light, they could vaguely see that poor zombie minion being easily torn apart. Damn two sharp ears, Suhu cursed under his breath. We need to find another way. Han Dongsheng shook his head, pointing his bone spurs toward the end of the platform, the pitch-black tunnel. The energy source he sensed was in that direction. Zhao Yuha understood. She quickly tore a strip from her own shirt and gestured for Su Hu to do the same. Wrap the soles of your shoes to reduce noise. He'll use telekinesis to make some noise ahead, draw it away. With cloth wrapped around their soles, stepping on the sticky ground was almost silent. The loud crash of a distant ticket vending machine collapsing successfully drew the blind monster's attention. Taking advantage, they hunched over and quickly slipped into the dark tunnel. Inside the tunnel, it was even stuffier than the platform, the air so damp you could wring water from it. Patches of faintly glowing blue-green fungi hung from the ceiling, barely illuminating the path. The walls and floor were almost entirely covered in that slippery fungal mat, thick and faintly writhing. There's something ahead. Suhu lowered his voice, his steel pipe tensed. The flashlight beam swept over. At a bend in the tunnel, several palm-sized creatures clung to the wall, their outlines vaguely like geckos, but upon closer inspection, they had 5 distinct fingers. Sensing the light and movement, they scuttled quickly into the darkness above. Gecko zombies. Liu Ruoxin's voice tightened, her trembling finger pointing upward. They'll drop from above. Before she finished, Han Dongsheng's bone spurs shot from his fingers, 2 sharp sounds pinning 2 of them. The remaining 4 suddenly dropped from above, diving straight at the shortest, Liu Ruoxin. Opt. Liu Ruoxin instinctively crouched, covering her head. Zhao Yuha reacted swiftly, using invisible force to sweep up 2 geckos and slam them hard against the opposite wall, smashing them into pulp. The other 2 had already latched onto Liu Ruoxin's backpack, their sharp teeth tearing at the canvas with frenzy. Suhu stepped forward, grabbing one with his large spade-like hand. His arm muscles bulged, and with a fierce shout, he wrenched it into 2 pieces. Black-green fluid splattered everywhere. Damn, this little bastard is tough. Han Dongsheng pulled Liu Ruoxin behind him and checked her over. The little girl shook her head, her face pale. I'm fine, zombie brother. From deep in the tunnel came faint crackling sounds, growing clearer as they advanced. Rounding the last bend, the sight before them made the group halt. A section of subway carriage lay twisted across the tracks like a crushed soda can. Dozens of charred corpses were scattered around, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of burned protein. The windows of the carriage were all shattered, and through the broken gaps, dazzling blue arcs of electricity leaped inside, casting the interior in flickering light and shadow. The entire carriage was still shaking violently, with dull thumping sounds coming from within. A plasma zombie. Liu Ruoxin's eyes widened. It discharges electricity. I only saw it in research files from my past life. Han Dongsheng scanned the surroundings, his gaze falling on the puddles of water covering the entire track area. He pointed at the water, then at Zhao Yuha, and finally made a detonating gesture. Use water to conduct electricity, he'll strike it with metal. Zhao Yuha understood immediately. Suhu cracked his knuckles, he'll lure it out. Han Dongsheng shook his head, pointed at himself, and quickly wrote on a piece of cardboard, "Im zombie electricity affects me less." No. Liu Ruoxin grabbed his arm on the verge of tears. A plasma zombie's electricity can burn through steel plates. You'll die. Han Dongsheng gently patted her head to reassure her. With a thought, he controlled his remaining 7 zombie minions, making them howl and spread out around the carriage to draw the monster's attention. I copied the bone spike ability. Liu Ruoxin suddenly pulled out 2 short, sharp bone spikes from behind her back. Though rudimentary, they were still lethal. I can help. Han Dongsheng shook his head again, pointing to a relatively dry higher ground in the distance, signaling her to stay there with Su, Hu, and Zhao Yua. Without waiting for further argument, Su Hu grabbed the little girl. "Listen to your brother. This is too dangerous. Don't cause trouble." Han Dongsheng hesitated no longer and strode into the waterlogged area. The splashing sounds immediately alerted the monster inside the carriage. A blinding blue light burst from the broken window, striking the water's surface. Zzzzz. The surrounding water instantly boiled, sending up clouds of white steam. The silhouette of the plasma zombie appeared in the window. It had lost all human form. Its entire body resembled a charred piece of charcoal covered in crackling blue arcs of electricity. "Get ready," Zhao Yua muttered. Her telekinesis lifted a half-meter-long broken steel rebar beside her, suspending it in midair. The plasma zombie inside the carriage seemed enraged, violently pressing its 2 charred hands against the metal walls. Vzzzt. The entire carriage was instantly engulfed in violent blue arcs. The puddles churned violently, and electricity spread like venomous snakes across the water's surface. Thump! Thump! Without even a scream, 7 of Han Dongsheng's zombie minions collapsed into the water, convulsing and emitting black smoke before going still. The intense current also surged through Han Dongsheng's body, searing his skin with burning pain. But he only staggered, gritted his teeth, and continued forward. "Now," roared Su Hu. With focused eyes, Zhao Yua launched the suspended rebar like an arrow from a bow. It pierced through the window with a sharp whoosh and drove deep into the plasma zombie's chest. At the same time, Su Hu grabbed the edges of the deformed carriage door. Veins bulging on his neck, he unleashed all his strength and tore open a gap wide enough for one person to pass through. Roar! The plasma zombie let out an inhuman shriek, unleashing even more terrifying currents from its body. The entire tunnel was illuminated as bright as day. Seizing the moment, Han Dongsheng charged into the carriage. All the bone spikes on his body bristled, forming a layer of bone armor. He lunged directly at the plasma zombie, extending sharp bone spikes from his fingers and driving them deep into the creature's charred body. Zzzt. Unspeakable agony instantly racked his entire being. Han Dongsheng felt as if his bones were being roasted, his consciousness fading in and out. But he didn't let go. Instead, he drove the bone spikes deeper. The electricity surged violently through the spikes into his body, rampaging within him, every inch of flesh screaming and burning. The plasma zombie struggled madly. The metal components inside the carriage groaned under the relentless heat and current, beginning to melt and deform. "Zombie brother!" Liu Ruoxin screamed and tried to rush forward, but Su Hu held her tightly from behind, restraining her. Just as Han Dongsheng was about to give out, a cold message flashed through his mind ability: electricity manipulation. You can absorb and release electrical energy. In the midst of the searing pain, he abruptly realized that the raging currents no longer felt purely destructive. Instead, they seemed like a force he could perceive and direct. Almost instinctively, Han Dongsheng moved the bone spike-laden hand from the plasma zombie's body to its absorb. The blue arcs found an outlet, madly draining from the plasma zombie's body, streaming through Han Dongsheng's arm and pouring into his own form. The plasma zombie's power visibly waned until the arcs on its surface extinguished completely, leaving it a smoking, charred husk in Han Dongsheng's grasp. At the point where the rebar had pierced its chest, a crystal core the size of an egg, pure azure in color, was revealed, emitting an alluring luster. The carriage finally returned to darkness and silence. Han Dongsheng released his grip, staggered back, and gasped for air. His body was still smoking, covered in fine electric burns, but none were fatal. A surge of unprecedented fullness pulsed within him. He could feel faint arcs of electricity dancing at his fingertips. The plasma zombie's crystal core lay in Han Dongsheng's palm, still throbbing. The azure light flickered, casting shifting shadows on the charred, twisted metal walls of the carriage. A tingling numbness crept into the marrow of his bones. Power climbed up through the marrow. Blue sparks burst at his fingertips. Arcs of electricity leaped, leaving fleeting bright traces on the blackened walls. "Zombie brother!" Liu Ruoxin broke free from Su Hu's grip, waded through the ankle-deep water with a splash, and rushed into the carriage. Her small face was taut, her voice strained. "Are you okay?" Han Dongsheng shook his head. An arc jumped from his fingertip, nearly grazing the approaching Liu Ruoxin. He quickly stepped back, picked up a pen, and scribbled on the dirty cardboard, "New ability, can't control it yet." Zhao Yuha also leaned in her polished thermos, hovering beside her shoulder, swaying slightly. Dongsheng, can you use that thing? Han Dongsheng tried to focus, pushing the restless energy toward his right arm. Blue arcs traced along the lines of the bone armor on his arm, finally coalescing into a trembling little electric ball at his fingertip. Wow, so cool. Liu Ruoxin's eyes widened. She opened a new page in her notebook, pen scratching rapidly. Electricity manipulation attack range. About 5 meters. Duration of. Suhu reached out and snapped her notebook shut. Figure out how to get out of this hellhole first. There'll be plenty of time for your research later. From deeper in the tunnel came heavy footsteps. The sound was viscous, dragging, and mixed with the grating noise of metal scraping against the ground. Han Dongsheng's back spikes instantly stiffened, rising alertly as he gestured for everyone to stay silent. There, the blind-eyed Liu Ruoxin whispered in a voice pressed low. Not just one. They were drawn by that flash of electricity. Han Dongsheng tried to contact his disposable subordinates. The signals were intermittent, though only 3 answered with faint responses. He hastily scribbled on the cardboard, Research Institute. Go to the Research Institute. Why City Biological Research Institute? Zhao Yuha frowned. That place isn't close. At least 10 kilometers from here. Han Dongsheng nodded vigorously, tapped his temple, and scrawled a crooked question mark. Suhu understood at once. There's something stirring in your head. Han Dongsheng wrote, summoning. Very strong, coming from the Research Institute. Possibly a lead. Liu Ruoxin hurriedly flipped open her cherished notebook. The Research Institute. In the last life, it was one of the earliest places to go wrong. Rumor said they were researching the zombie virus there. Footsteps drew nearer, accompanied by a teeth-grinding horse pant. Han Dongsheng no longer hesitated. He ordered the 3 remaining zombie minions to rush toward the source of the footsteps and make a commotion. He then led the 3 of them and quickly found a nearby emergency exit, slipping out. The suffocating claustrophobia of the subway tunnel finally dissolved. Back on the surface, the sky had already darkened. The setting sun lay across the ground like blood, lending the deathly silent city an indefinable, uncanny tint. Distant towers remained only as ink-black silhouettes, standing mute. Han Dongsheng felt clearly how the electric currents within him intertwined and collided with his innate bones pike ability, producing a peculiar resonance. At the thought, he tried to channel a thread of current into a thoroughly dead zombie at his feet. The corpse convulsed violently a few times. Its joints made crisp cracking sounds. It staggered, wobbling, and then, astonishingly, stood up again. Holy! Suhu recoiled a step, his steel pipe nearly slipping from his grasp. Dongsheng, you can make the dead live. Han Dongsheng shook his head and wrote on the cardboard, temporary like a marionette. Liu Ruoxin flushed with excitement and furiously took notes, using electric current to stimulate dead muscle tissue. To simulate bioelectric signals. The duration should be short. Zhao Yuha scanned their surroundings with alertness. Dongsheng, can you sense how many zombies are nearby right now? Han Dongsheng closed his eyes. His mental force spread outward. Within a 2-kilometer radius, there were roughly 200 active zombie signals. A dozen or so carried obvious, anomalous energy fluctuations of varying strength. Farther away from the direction of the Research Institute, a calling sensation washed over his mind in waves. Each surged stronger than the last, scrubbing his thoughts and growing clearer, threaded with an indescribable temptation. He wrote, over 200, all heading toward the Research Institute. They've been called there too. Suhu tightened his grip on the steel pipe. This is not right. Han Dongsheng nodded in agreement, then pointed to a narrow alley to the northeast, signaling it as the temporarily safest direction. The 4 of them hurried along the abandoned commercial street. Han Dongsheng walked in front, occasionally releasing 1 or 2 electricity-driven zombie puppets to scout ahead. Their movements were stiff, but at least they could be sacrificed without regret. Liu Ruoxin stayed close behind him, her small hand clutching a Swiss Army knife as she vigilantly swept the shadows along the street. Brother Zombie, she suddenly whispered, what do you think is inside the Research Institute? Han Dongsheng paused. He thought for a moment, and then wrote 2 words on the cardboard, answer. Antidote. Liu Ruoxin's expression grew complicated, she bit her lip. If there really is an antidote, would you become human again? Han Dongsheng froze. Become human again. He looked down at his ashen hand, fine scars from electric burns crisscrossed its surface, and the outline of bone spikes at his knuckles was faintly visible. When he lifted his head, he saw Liu Ruoxin's clean face threaded with a certain hope. Become human again. The thought felt heavy and strangely foreign. He picked up the pen and left a few crooked words on the dirty cardboard. Maybe. After a pause, he added another, survive first. Shoo. Suhu suddenly raised his hand, lowering his voice as his whole body tensed. Car. Ahead. The dull rumble of an engine approached. A black, gleaming SUV crawled through the intersection, its body welded with steel plates and ramming bars resembling a mobile fortress. The searchlight on the roof flared on a cruel white beam sweeping savagely down both sides of the street, driving out every shadow. A few figures trailed the vehicle clad in matching dark tactical uniforms, guns at the ready and footsteps steady, clearly trained operators. Alive! Zhao Yuha reacted quickly and dragged Liu Ruoxin into the shadow of a nearby shop. These people are not to be trifled with. Han Dongsheng pulled his mask higher and angled his cap lower to conceal most of his face. He silently signaled to Su Hu and Zhao Yuha not to act rashly. The blinding beam, as if endowed with sight, abruptly fixed on the mouth of the alley where they hid. Under the beam, the four of them had nowhere to hide. Target spotted. 4. 2 men, 2 women. 1 adult, 1 child. Someone on the roof shouted through a megaphone, the voice cracking as it spread. Don't shoot. We're survivors. We mean no harm. Su Hu hastily raised both hands and stepped forward. His large frame shielded most of the 3 behind him. Footsteps sounded. 4 armed operatives quickly fanned out and sealed the alley. Muzzles of guns pointed darkly at them. The leader was a hefty middle-aged man, a menacing scar running from brow to jaw that almost split his face. He held an oddly shaped gun whose barrel glowed with a faint blue light, a light that stirred the electric energy Han Dongsheng had just absorbed into restless agitation. Who are you? Where are you headed? The leader barked, his voice low and rough, each word falling like a hammer. Just ordinary survivors. Zhao Yuha forced her voice steady. Looking for a safe place. The muscles beneath the leader's scar twitched as his gaze roved over the 4 of them, finally settling on Han Dongsheng. You take off your mask. Han Dongsheng froze almost imperceptibly. Sparks began to gather at his fingertips. Su Hu immediately blurted out, my brother. His throat is shot. He inhaled some drug smoke a couple of days ago and can't speak. I don't care about his throat, the leader said, lifting the strange gun and leveling it at Han Dongsheng. I want to see if he's infected. The air in the alley stiffened. The bone spikes along Han Dongsheng's back twitched restlessly. Electric light danced at his fingertips. Should he strike first? Just then Liu Ruoxin suddenly darted out from behind Su Hu. Sir, she said, lifting her small face, her voice trembling though she tried to stand straight. My brother. He just fell ill, that's why his skin looks like this. He's not a zombie. We're really only trying to find a safe place. The leader's motion halted. He lowered his eyes to the little girl who had not yet reached the height of his thigh. The ferocity on his face seemed to ebb somewhat. He watched Liu Ruoxin in silence for a few seconds. Then he turned his head and whispered a few words to the team member beside him. He lowered his weapon a bit. Little girl, what's your name? Liu Ruoxin. Hearing this name, the leader's hand that gripped the gun seemed to tighten, but soon returned to its cold and tough demeanor. He did not mention the mask again, but his tone remained harsh. This area is extremely dangerous now. Monsters are everywhere. You'd better get the hell out of here. We plan to go to Y City Biological Research Institute. Zhao Yuha stepped forward, half a step, her tone neither humble nor arrogant. We heard there might be an official shelter there, or useful information. Research Institute. The leader laughed as if hearing a huge joke, the corner of his mouth twitching into a cold smirk. Ha, shelter. That place is a meat grinder now. I lost half my team 3 days ago and barely crawled out of there. These words sank the hearts of the group. What is inside exactly? Zhao Yuha pressed. Monsters, the leader's scar jumped, his voice lower. Not the rotten flesh outside, but things bred in the lab. And those ghost vines. Touch them and you're done for. They suck out your brains. Liu Ruoxin instinctively clutched her notebook, the pen tip racing across the paper. What are you writing? The leader's sharp glance swept over, fixing on the little girl's notebook. Nothing. Liu Ruoxin quickly shut the notebook, hiding it behind her. I am just jotting down some notes. The leader stared at her for a few seconds. That silence made Su Hu and Zhao Yuha break into a cold sweat. He suddenly turned his head, looking at Han Dongsheng, his voice heavy as it fell. Protect this child. These words came out of nowhere, but Han Dongsheng felt a chill crawl up his spine. He instinctively shielded Liu Ruoxin further behind him, the electric arcs at his fingertips, jumping more urgently, ready to be thrown at any moment. Captain, east. Something big is coming. A team member raised his gun, his voice taut. The scar-faced man wasted no more words, waving his hand, retreat. Before getting into the car, he paused, lowering his voice toward Zhao Yuha. If you're determined to go die, the main gate of the research institute has a defense system. Don't touch it. There's a drainage hole on the east wall. With that, he stopped lingering and quickly boarded the car. The SUV's engine roared, tires screeching against the ground, and soon disappeared around the street corner. Hey, what did that bastard mean? A wolf in sheep's clothing. Su scratched his head, utterly puzzled. And why was he staring at our little girl? What's his deal? Zhao Yuha shook her head. Not sure, but these guys are no ordinary people. They have much better gear than us. They're definitely not common civilians. Han Dongsheng scribbled on the cardboard, continue to the research institute, be cautious. Night completely swallowed the city. The 4 of them, following the direction the scar-faced man had finally pointed, moved quickly through the ruins. The closer they got to the research institute, the louder the noise in Han Dongsheng's head, like a needle prick forcing him to stop and catch his breath. It wasn't a sound, but more like some frequency vibrating directly against his bones. The electric current inside him also jumped erratically, stirred by something far away, unable to settle. "Zombie brother, are you okay?" Liu Ruoxin saw him stop, trotted over, tugged his sleeve worriedly. Han Dongsheng shook his head, picked up the pen, and left a trace on the cardboard, summoning sensation, a strong headache. "How about we find a place to hole up for the night?" Suhu, seeing Han Dongsheng's discomfort, was getting cold feet. Han Dongsheng shook his head vigorously, his nails scraping a harsh sound on the cardboard. "Must go. There might be clues or an antidote." Antidote. At those two words, Suhu and Zhao Yuhe fell silent. Zhao Yuhe let out a soft sigh. "Then let's go. Dongsheng, if you can't take it anymore, just say the word, and we'll bail immediately." Finally, the black silhouette of Y City Biological Research Institute stood against the skyline, eerie and gloomy. A high wall blocked the way, pitch black, covered with writhing vines that flickered with a faint blue-green light, looking utterly creepy. "Brain vines." Liu Ruoxin muttered softly, her arm instinctively tightening around Han Dongsheng's arm. "They absorb the brain waves of living things. Extremely dangerous." Outside the wall, dozens of zombies lay scattered on the ground, each with those glowing vines sticking into their heads, shriveled, their contents long drained. "Don't touch the wall," Han Dongsheng wrote, leading the three to carefully feel their way eastward along the wall. At the east corner of the research institute, a half-open manhole cover was exposed, surrounded by scattered pieces of broken concrete. Beside the manhole cover, two corpses in the same combat uniform lay on the ground, their gear scattered everywhere, looking like they died miserably. "This must be it." Suhu kicked aside a brick next to the manhole cover with the tip of his shoe. Han Dongsheng didn't think twice. He first split off a thread of mental energy to control the only remaining electric puppet. The puppet climbed stiffly down the manhole, disappearing into the darkness. After more than 10 seconds, Han Dongsheng confirmed that the puppet was still moving below and hadn't encountered danger. Only then did he signal the other three and slid down first himself. Unexpectedly, the sewer wasn't as filthy as imagined. On the contrary, it was abnormally dry, with emergency lights hanging on the walls. Though dim, it was clearly modified by someone. After walking along the passage for about 10 minutes, a thick metal blast door blocked the way. The door had a complex electronic combination lock and a fingerprint scanner next to it. "Damn, are you kidding me? Can't get in." Suhu stepped up and pushed hard, but the door didn't budge. Han Dongsheng walked forward, took off his glove, revealing a palm covered with fine electric burn scars, and pressed it against the sensor area next to the lock. He closed his eyes, carefully probing a thread of electric current into the lock circuitry. A mess of tangled circuit diagrams instantly flooded his mind. He suppressed the discomfort, relying on intuition to simulate the unlocking signal with the current. Beep. The electronic lock screen flickered a few times. The red light turned to green. A line of small text appeared on the screen: "Emergency mode activated." The heavy metal door let out a muffled click and slowly slid open inward. "Awesome, zombie brother." Liu Ruoxin's eyes practically sparkled. But before she finished speaking, the door opened only a crack the width of a palm. "Woo, woo, woo." A sharp alarm blared, shaking the eardrums. The entire underground passage was instantly flooded with piercing red light. A cold, mechanical female voice came from above, devoid of emotion. "Warning. Unauthorized intrusion detected. A level clearance invalid. Activate emergency defense protocol. Release various subjects." Repeat. Release various subjects. Holy crap. Various subjects. Suha's face turned pale. He grabbed his steel pipe and turned to run. "Fall back fast." Han Dongsheng grabbed him firmly. He pointed to the deeper darkness beyond the door. That place was the core of the research institute. The source of that deadly summoning sensation in his mind was right inside. They had to go in. "Since we're already here." Zhao Yi's throat tightened as she thrust her thermos forward, ready to hurl it as a weapon at any moment. "We can't just leave empty-handed." Liu Ruoxin also brandished her Swiss Army knife, her pale little face set in a grimace as she gritted her teeth. "Right? Who's afraid?" The four of them pressed their backs against the icy wall, slipping through the narrow gap of the metal door in a flash. A pungent smell of disinfectant slammed into their nostrils, laced with a cloying metallic tang that churned. The corridor was unusually wide. Harsh white light from overhead cast a cold, eerie glow on the walls on both sides, deathly still. On either side of the walls were rooms partitioned by thick glass, crammed with all sorts of bizarre metal contraptions and experimental equipment, some screens still flickering faintly. In a few of the rooms, dark, indistinct shapes remained on metal dissection tables, barely discernible as dismantled human structures and twisted, deformed zombie remains. Suhas Adams apple bobbed as he pressed his lips into a thin line. At the end of the corridor stood a huge glass cylinder, nearly reaching the ceiling. The cylinder was filled with viscous murky green liquid inside, which a faint humanoid form drifted slowly up and down, its features obscured. Glub! A bubble abruptly rose in the green liquid and burst. At that very moment, the soft pop of the bubble shattered the deathly silence of the corridor, piercingly sharp. Almost simultaneously, click, 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 click. Not a single sound, but a cascade of metallic clicks. From both sides of the corridor, every lock on the thick glass compartments snapped open. Before the sound faded, the doors were flung open violently. Over a dozen figures in filthy hospital gowns burst out. Their movements were so swift they left afterimages a sickly green glow emanating from where their heads should be grotesque under the harsh white light. Their arms. No, those weren't hands at all. Extending from the ends were ghastly bone spurs over a foot long, twisted and menacing. Even stouter than the bone blades, Han Dongsheng had mutated himself. Damn! Suhu cursed, instinctively gripping his knife tightly. Zhao Yuha held her thermos before her chest, her knuckles white. Experiment subjects. Liu Ruoxin's voice cracked, trembling uncontrollably. They're live experiment subjects. Han Dongsheng's mind went blank. Almost on reflex, his psychic energy surged as he tried to forcibly hijack the charging monsters. The thought had barely formed. Arg! A searing pain like innumerable red-hot needles stabbed deep into the core of his consciousness. He grunted, staggering half a step, his face instantly drained of color. These things. Could they actually resist his mental control? They weren't ordinary zombies. Only the three closest faltered momentarily, the rest howled, their bone spurs slicing through the foul air as they lunged forward. They can't be controlled. Zhao Yuha screamed. The thermos in front of her whirred through the air, smashing into an experiment subject's face. At the same time, invisible force swept up two others and slammed them violently against the opposite glass wall. Bam! Crash! Glass shattered. Suhu swung his steel pipe with all his might, striking an experiment subject's arm with a deafening clang, sparks flying. The creature merely swayed, then stabbed back with its bone spur. Hell, tough one. Suhu rolled away. Han Dongsheng's spinal bone blades shot out in an instant as he met the nearest experiment subject. Bone spur against bone spur. Clang. A grating metallic screech. He suddenly noticed that behind the neck of each experiment subject was embedded a fingernail-sized metal chip, glowing faintly blue. Neck. Han Dongsheng signaled Zhao Yuha quickly with his eyes while parrying. Zhao Yuha understood instantly. She concentrated her telekinetic power into an invisible spike and drove it fiercely into the back of an experiment subject's neck. Snap! The metal chip shattered. The experiment subject froze abruptly, its green pupils going blank as it stood motionless in place. Hit the thing on the back of its neck. Zhao Yu's voice carried a note of surprise. The battle dynamic shifted instantly. Han Dongsheng took point, his bone blades flashing occasional arcs of electricity, dancing at his fingertips, drawing most of the fire. Suhu seized every opportunity to bash the experiment subject's nape with his steel pipe. Zhao Yuha focused on sniping the metal chips with her telekinesis. Liu Ruoxin huddled in a relatively safe corner, her small notebook nearly full, muttering under her breath. Type A, bone spurs fast. Type B, strong. A searing pain shot through Han Dongsheng's left arm. In a final desperate counterattack, an experiment subject's bone spur ripped open his arm, flesh turning out, exposing the white bone beneath. The pain was excruciating, but in the next second a tingling itch spread from the wound as new flesh began to knit. The last experiment subject's neck chip was smashed by Suhu's pipe, it wobbled and crashed to the floor. Silence finally descended on the corridor, broken only by heavy breathing. Zombie Big Brother. Liu Ruoxin rushed over, fumbling in her backpack for gauze. Han Dongsheng waved his hand to indicate he was fine. The torn arm had already stopped bleeding, the gruesome wound healing visibly, leaving only faint traces. He pointed toward the half-open metal door at the end of the corridor, the central control room. The screen's glow still flickered there. The four exchanged glances and cautiously approached. Through the crack in the door came the low hum of various instruments in operation. Pushing the door open, they entered a spacious room lined with a row of computer terminals. Most screens were dark. Only the one in the center remained lit, its faint glow illuminating dried dark red stains on the keyboard. The screen displayed dense text that looked like a log. Han Dongsheng walked over, as if compelled by some strange force. The text on the screen was tiny: project codename Genesis, experimental objective consciousness upload and neural link control, day 127. Sample K01 consciousness upload failed, brain-computer interface established. Hypothesis: remote consciousness synchronization possible through unknown field. Day 156, sample Han. The rest of the text was obscured by a large splatter of dried blood, completely illegible. Han. Han Dongsheng's pupils contracted sharply, his outstretched finger froze midair, trembling slightly. That character Han seared into his mind like a branding iron. Zombie Big Brother this. Liu Ruoxin also moved closer, saw the character, her voice quivering. Zhao Yi's expression turned grim. Dongsheng, does this mean? Han Dongsheng shook his head violently, a hoarse sound escaping his throat. He didn't know. He knew nothing. Why was his surname here? Could it be that his transformation and arrival in this godforsaken place were inextricably linked to this damned institute? Before the thought could finish, the other black screen beside it suddenly flickered on. Snow static danced for a few seconds, then an extremely blurry figure appeared on the screen. Sample K01, a mechanical emotionless, synthesized voice rang out abruptly, echoing in the silent control room. You have finally returned. Sample K01, a mechanical emotionless voice echoed through the dead silent control room. You have finally returned. Han Dongsheng shuddered violently, a chill shooting up his spine as the bone spurs on his back uncontrollably rose one by one. A piercing pain stabbed through his skull like needles. White light exploded before his eyes, and a fragment of memory, both foreign and familiar, forcibly squeezed into his mind. A white laboratory, the shadowless lamp, glaring so brightly it made one's eyes ache. On the operating table lay a human figure unconscious. A person in a white coat and mask held a syringe. That person. Begin recording K01 test subject neuron interfacing experiment phase 1. The memory broke off. Han Dongsheng staggered backward, his nails digging into his flesh, the bone spurs twitching restlessly beneath his skin. This voice, this memory. That white coat. Was it himself? Zombie brother. Liu Ruoxin tugged at his sleeve and whispered. The mechanical voice sounded again. Sample K01, your consciousness upload ratio has reached 67. We need you to complete the final stage. The biological neural network has been deployed, and missing memory fragments can be retrieved. The screen flickered with snow, then froze on a photograph. A man in a suit stood at the entrance of a research institute, cutting a ribbon with a standard smile. Below the photo was a line of small text, Inauguration Ceremony of Dr. Han Dongsheng, Director of the Neuroscience Department. Han Dongsheng's throat went dry, forcing out a hoarse syllable, his eyes almost embedded into the screen. That face belonged to him, yet his mind was a blank. Zhao Yuha gasped, Dongsheng, are you? From here. Han Dongsheng's head buzzed, the world spinning around him. He wasn't just a survivor struggling to stay alive. He was one of the architects of all this. The thought crashed down, shattering the last remnants of his self-identity into dust. Beside him, Su Hu's hand loosened, and the steel pipe clattered to the floor with a piercing sound. Impossible. Zhao Yi's voice cut sharply through the mechanical tone. How could he be from the Institute? He has been helping us. Liu Ruoxin remained silent. She bent down, crawled under the console, and pulled out a sliding drawer. Inside lay a black leather-bound experiment log and a small metal storage device. She picked up the log, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened it. Her voice quivered as she read, Soul Transfer Project Trial No. 67, presided over by Dr. Han Dongsheng. Han Dongsheng snatched the log away, every muscle in his body tense as stone. A dense array of writing rushed into his eyes. It was his handwriting, he recognized it, yet he had absolutely no memory of writing such things. Sample series progressing smoothly. Breakthrough achieved in soul transfer technology. Neural networks can achieve partial consciousness synchronization between hosts. Observed increase in aggression, but self-awareness retention rate shows declining trend. K01 scheduled for ultimate testing next week. The log's last page was splattered with several drops of long-dried blackened bloodstains. The handwriting was scrawled and twisted, exuding desperation. Urgent record K00 out of control. Experiment zone has fallen. I have been infected. The only option is to self-inject the type original fluid, using myself as a sample to establish the final consciousness link. If I fail, the soul transfer network will lose its control terminal. If I succeed, perhaps something can still be salvaged. Final order, whoever reads this, destroy the Institute. What exists here should not exist. The wound on Han Dongsheng's arm suddenly burned with intense pain. Fine arcs of electricity leaped uncontrollably between his fingertips, and the glaring blue light cast a pallid shadow on his face. Countless possibilities pierced into his mind like fragments. Was he the source of all this? Did he personally bring this catastrophe into the world? Sample K01, your bioelectrical waves are fluctuating. The mechanical voice remained cold and hauntingly precise. You are not the first type sample, but you are the only one who has retained self-awareness and can control other infected beings. This is precisely the ultimate goal of the experiment, creating a super individual with group control capabilities. The console snapped open, a projection window. Surveillance footage. In the lab, a person was strapped to an operating table covered with tubes and electrodes. That person was himself. Beside him, several people in white coats were slowly injecting a bluish liquid into his body. Damn it. Suhu couldn't hold back, slamming his fist into the metal wall nearby, producing a dull thud. These sons of bitches are insane. Liu Ruoxin suddenly grabbed Han Dongsheng's clothes, her face turning pale. This date. 3 years ago. It started 3 years ago. But the apocalypse only erupted a month ago. Zhao Yuha was about to speak, but paused. She slowly turned her head toward the entrance of the passage, her voice dry. Something is coming. Heavy footsteps echoed from deep within the corridor, one step, then another. Much heavier than any test subject they had encountered before. With each step the metal floor beneath trembled slightly, and dust showered from the edges of the ceiling. We need to get the hell out of this place. Suhu picked up the steel pipe from the ground, muscles taut. Han Dongsheng stuffed the log into Liu Ruoxin's arms, then grabbed the metal storage device from the console. He didn't know what was inside, but an instinctive voice told him it was immensely important. At that moment, Suhu, who had been randomly pressing buttons at another console, turned pale. Crap. I think I pressed. A shrill alarm exploded once more piercing than before. The entire control room was drowned in wildly flashing red warning lights. The ceiling emergency sprinkler system activated, spraying cold mist-like liquid. Warning. Central system will self-destruct in 10 minutes. All area lockdowns lifted. Test subject restraints released. Repeat, test subject restraints released. 10 minutes. Zhao Yuha grabbed Liu Ruoxin and rushed toward the door, the insulated cup that had been floating beside her spinning rapidly. Find a way out fast. But Han Dongsheng stood rooted to the spot, his eyes locked onto the main screen. The projection window switched to an image of a massive cylindrical cultivation tank. Inside the tank, in murky liquid, floated a human silhouette. The silhouette was covered in a thick bone-like armor, as if the bone spurs on his own body had fully evolved into a set of ferocious battle armor. At the bottom of the tank, a line was clearly marked K00, prototype body. Prototype K00, the mechanical voice explained in due time, the first test subject to undergo consciousness upload. Upload ratio 99, self-retention rate 0. 3. A pure war machine, but excessively unstable. Before the words faded, a deafening crash erupted from the end of the corridor. Boom. A deafening crash slammed through the eardrums, making the scalp tingle. The wall in front cracked like a spiderweb, and not only dust but chunks of cement fell off. Han Dongsheng wasted no more thought. He gripped the metal memory drive and thrust it into a slot on the console's side. The screen lit up, displaying a data transfer progress bar that climbed slowly but steadily. I must get this data out. I must figure out what the hell happened in this damn place. No. Liu Ruoxin gasped, her pupils contracting sharply. She pointed frantically at a monitor, her voice cracking. Fat Hat culture tank. It's empty. It's out. Before her words faded, the wall exploded into a savage hole. Amidst swirling dust and debris, a massive dark figure stood there. The creature was at least 2.5 meters tall. Its body was covered in a layer of bone armor, not pale white, but with a yellowish aged texture. Spikes of bone jutted from the joints, far thicker than those on Han Dongsheng's own body, sending a chill through the heart just by looking. Its head was a bald skull devoid of mouth, nose, or ears. Only 2 bottomless eye sockets contained flickering blue flames. K01. It spoke, its voice a grating metal sound mixed with electric hissing. Each word weighed heavily, compressing the air until it nearly stopped flowing. Finally. Found you. Little brother. Little brother. Those 2 words slammed straight into the depths of Han Dongsheng's mind. With a buzz, the bioelectricity in his body went completely haywire, surging wildly along neural pathways, unleashing a sharp, numbing pain. Before his eyes came those fragments again. A blurry, smiling face, a gentle voice calling his name, a white lab coat swaying in the lab, accompanied by suppressed arguments and excitement. That was brother. His head throbbed unbearably. He didn't even notice his fingers digging into the metal wall beside him, his knuckles white. The bone-armored monster extended a hand, its 5 finger bones sharp blades completed. What we started. The network. Needs a control source. Your brain. Brother. Liu Ruoxin blurted out, her voice distorted with shock and disbelief. Dongsheng. Move. Zhao Yuha roared. An invisible force suddenly lifted the heavy metal console, hurling it like a missile through the air straight at the bone-armored monster's chest. Bang. Ear splitting. The console exploded upon impact, shattering into pieces. Metal panel circuit boards parts flew everywhere, sparks crackled, and the air filled with the acrid smell of ozone. The dust cleared slightly. The bone-armored monster stood rooted, not a step back. Its armor showed not a trace of damage. Its skull head turned slowly, hollow sockets locking onto Zhao Yuha. The blue flames danced more wildly. Eliminate. Obstacle. In a flash, Han Dongsheng lunged forward. The bone spikes on his arms elongated, instantly crackling with arcs of electricity, crossing to block the monster's descending claws. Creak. The 2 sets of bone spikes ground against each other, producing a screech that threatened to tear. At the contact point, blue arcs flared, humming low, and a strange vibration transmitted through the spikes into Han Dongsheng's entire body, making his bones tingle. Go. Get out of here. Han Dongsheng ground out through clenched teeth. Every ounce of current surged into his arms' bone spikes, and arcs intertwining barely holding against the terrifying force. The Institute's self-destruct countdown alarm grew more urgent with each beep. 8 minutes, 7 minutes, 30 seconds. Bullshit. We go together or not at all. Su-Hu's eyes were bloodshot as he swung a steel pipe about to charge. The bone-armored monster suddenly paused, its skull tilting slightly. Memory. Sector damaged. Initiate. Neural link. With a soft click, a crack opened in the center of its chest armor, revealing a pulsating blue core emitting an ominous glow. Next second, a blinding blue beam shot from the core too fast to dodge, striking Han Dongsheng squarely between the eyebrows. Pain. It felt like a high-speed drill was shoved into his head, churning wildly. Countless images, sounds, smells, sensations flooded into his consciousness like a tidal wave. The Research Institute's conference room, a projector beam illuminating Project K, building a biological neural network through consciousness upload. The sterile lab, him and another young man in white lab coats high-fiving in excitement, the smell of disinfectant. The cold needle piercing his own arm, the slow injection of a blue liquid. The day of the apocalypse, the earth-shattering explosion at the Institute's entrance, fire and smoke, screams and running footsteps, the rough feel of cold floor against his cheek. Among the scattered corpses, something lunged, teeth tearing flesh, intense pain, then rapid spreading cold and numbness. Hanhu. K00's voice suddenly became clearer, no longer purely mechanical, even carrying a hint of human tone. You failed. I gave you the chance to complete the upload. Now forced execution is the only option. I am not Hanhu. Han Dongsheng barely managed to squeeze out those words. He wasn't Hanhu. He was Han Dongsheng. Then who was Hanhu? A cold voice whispered in the depths of his mind. He is your brother. The original designer of Project K. And also the first volunteer, K00. Who the hell cares who he is? Su-Hu, not giving Han Dongsheng a moment to think, roared and charged, grabbing the back collar of his combat suit and dragging him backward with all his strength. A huge buzz in his head. The forcibly established neural link snapped. Agony mixed with a torrent of chaotic information slammed into his brain. Han Dongsheng's vision went dark, his body swayed, and he nearly collapsed. Brother Dongsheng, wake up. Liu Ruoxin rushed over, slapping his cheeks with her little hands, her voice choked with tears. From deeper within the Institute came continuous explosions, the entire floor and walls shaking violently. The ceiling lights flickered, threatening to go out. 5 minutes. No. I must find out. Han Dongsheng shook his head, enduring the intense pain and dizziness, shoving Su-Hu's arm away. He staggered upright, turned, and faced the approaching bone-armored monster again. The blue core in K00's chest flickered wildly, its glow intensifying, radiating a dangerous aura. I must find out. Han Dongsheng staggered, forcefully shaking off Su-Hu's arm. He turned around to face the bone-armored monster, K00, that was closing in on him. The blue light core within the creature's chest pulsed with escalating frenzy, its radiance stinging the skin with an almost tangible intensity. Terminate. Or transform. K00's voice scraped through the air, each syllable carrying the pain of electricity drilling into the eardrums. It raised its hand. From the crevices of its bone armor, viscous azure liquid seeped out, drawing into countless fine threads in midair that reached toward Han Dongsheng's forehead. Han Dongsheng remained motionless. He simply stood there, watching the blue threads approach and touch. First came an icy chill, then a searing, scorching pain. A powerful surge of electric current instantly flooded down from the crown of his head. Under his ashen skin, blood vessels bulged and knotted, blue light spreading wildly along them, causing the flesh to sizzle with a burnt crackle wherever it passed. Ugh! Han Dongsheng let out an uncontrollable roar of agony. The bone spikes on his back stood erect, resonating strangely with K00's body armor, emitting a deep, continuous hum that rippled through the air. Two similar yet distinct bone structures transcending the barrier of flesh resonated with each other in this moment, as if, no, truly, they recognized one another. The space between them began to warp, vision blurring. Light and shadow shifted. In a brightly lit laboratory, two men in white coats stood shoulder to shoulder. Before them, a massive projection screen displayed an extremely complex molecular structure model. Dongsheng, look. This research will change the entire world. The older man, his emotions running high, pointed at the data on the screen. Consciousness upload, neural network connection. Humans will completely break free from the shackles of the flesh and attain immortality. The risks are too great, brother, Han Dongsheng said, frowning with deep concern. We don't have enough data to support the stability tests for large-scale neuron connections. This is too reckless. That's why I'll be the first. Han, who clapped his younger brother's shoulder forcefully, his eyes burning with fervor. Project K00 starts with me. Yuhan Dongsheng are K01, my backup. If something, heaven forbid, goes wrong on my end, you take over and fix it. His tone brooked no argument. The scene abruptly jumped. On a frigid operating table, Han Hu's body convulsed violently. Something was growing wildly beneath his skin, forcing out terrifying protrusions, tearing through muscle and flesh as blood gushed forth. Bone structures were bursting out of his body. Abort. Stop the experiment immediately. Han Dongsheng screamed, his eyes blazing with fury as he lunged toward the control panel. An arm blocked him. A calm-faced woman wearing glasses stood in his way. Dr. Han, the experiment has entered an irreversible phase. It cannot be stopped. The board of directors has ordered it to continue. Professor Lin, this will kill him. He's my brother. Han Dongsheng's voice was hoarse. Or it will create a miracle. The woman adjusted her glasses, her tone utterly flat. As my daughter said, we are witnessing the birth of a new era. The scene shifted again. Ear-splitting alarms, piercing screams, and successive explosions mingled into a cacophony that filled the entire space. In the Institute's corridor, the floor and walls were splattered with dark red bloodstains, severed limbs, and remains littered the ground. Han Dongsheng stumbled as he ran a deep wound on his arm that exposed the bone, its edges tinged with an unnatural bluish-black, as if gnawed by something savage. He burst through a door, charging into his own laboratory, and slammed it shut, locking it tightly. Sliding down against the cold metal door to the floor, he tremblingly pulled a syringe from his pocket, filled with a cerulean liquid. He stared at the liquid, then looked up into the depths of the lab, where all his hope and despair seemed to reside. Brother, I'm sorry. He closed his eyes and plunged the needle viciously into his arm. The blue liquid was forcefully injected into his veins. I will use myself to complete the final experiment. If it succeeds, maybe I can still control the situation. Cold and heat swept through his body in an instant. The tide of memory receded with a roar. Han Dongsheng gasped heavily, his chest heaving, his clothes soaked with sweat. Reality refocused. K00, Han Hu, his brother, stood before him. Deep within the gaps of the hideous skull-like bone helm, one could faintly discern a facial outline strikingly similar to Han Dongsheng's, though twisted in pain. Dongsheng, do you remember now? K00's voice changed. It was no longer that pure inhuman metallic scrape, but laced with a trace of human raspy warmth. We were both used. Brother. Han Dongsheng's throat was parched as he forced out the word. The bone spikes on his back buzzed and trembled with the violent surge of emotions. At that moment, boom, the side wall suddenly blasted open with a massive crack. Debris flew everywhere. The ceiling overhead let out a groaning protest as it began to tremble violently, sending down dust and chunks. The cold electronic announcement echoed through the Institute. Warning: self-destruct sequence has been initiated. Remaining time 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Warning: structural integrity below 10%. Imminent total collapse. Dongsheng, Zhao Yuha screamed, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. There's no time. Run. K00. Han Hu suddenly spun around. His arms, covered in thick bone armor, reached upward and, defying the laws of physics, braced against the rapidly collapsing ceiling. His entire massive back arched and bulged, withstanding the tremendous downward force, forming a precarious bone bridge. You two. Go. Quickly. He managed to force out between strained words, his voice distorted by immense pressure. Brother. Han Dongsheng's eyes burned with fury as he instinctively tried to rush back. My body is already not human anymore. K00 turned his head with difficulty, blue light spilling from the gaps in his helm. But part of my memory remains in you. The board. They used the genes of us brothers to create a virus. They want to control everything. More chunks of concrete rained down, slamming against his bone armor. Fine cracks began to appear on the surface of the bone armor, spreading rapidly. But he still held on stubbornly, not retreating an inch. The main system is in the city center. That origin point. Find it. Stop them. Don't be foolish. Fall back now. Suhu reacted swiftly, hoisting the terrified Liu Ruoxin onto his shoulder with one arm, while firmly gripping Han Dongsheng with the other, dragging him backward. At the end of the corridor, the emergency evacuation elevator's door was slowly sliding open, its red indicator light flashing frantically. Quick! Zhao Yuha muttered sharply as an invisible wave of psychokinesis erupted forcibly, prying the heavy elevator door wider and shoving Suhu, Liu Ruoxin, and Han Dongsheng inside. In the final moment before being pushed into the elevator, Han Dongsheng suddenly turned his head. He saw that K00's bone armor was already covered in cobweb-like cracks, with a deep blue radiance bursting forth from every fissure, illuminating his entire body like glass on the verge of shattering. He heard his brother's final voice ringing clearly through the roar and collapse. Live on. Little brother. The elevator door slammed shut. Immediately after, a deafening rumble erupted outside, causing the entire elevator car to shake violently. The ceiling had completely caved in. The elevator began ascending with intense vibrations. A deathly silence fell within the car. Liu Ruoxin struggled down from Su Hu's shoulder, fumbled frantically in her backpack to retrieve the metal storage device, and quickly connected it to her portable tablet. Her fingers slid rapidly across the screen, streams of data flashing past. "Zombie brother, there's data in here," she suddenly exclaimed, her voice trembling with post-apocalyptic relief and a hint of excitement. "Maps. A lot of experiment records. And, oh, I found it." On the screen, a detailed, three-dimensional city map was retrieved. Deep beneath the city center, a massive red dot was blinking with a line of text beside it: Origin Center. Neural Network, Main Control Hub. That should be the place. The very core controlling all the variants. Liu Ruoxin spoke rapidly, her voice quivering with excitement. "And this?" She swiped again, pulling up another encrypted file, and after decrypting it, a list of names appeared. The list contained all the core researchers involved in Project K. The names Han Dongsheng and Han Hu were prominently listed. Another name was highlighted in striking red: Lin Xiaoyu, Chief Biological Neuroscientist. Beside the list was a somewhat blurry electronic group photo. The photo's background seemed to be the entrance of the institute that had just collapsed. A woman in a white lab coat and glasses holding a little girl of 5 or 6 stood in front of the institute. The woman was smiling at the camera, but the smile felt oddly unsettling. Liu Ruoxin's fingertips lingered on the group photo on the screen, and her body stiffened almost imperceptibly. She stared intently at the woman's face in the photo, her fingers trembling slightly. "This is..." Her voice was barely audible. Before she could finish, a loud clunk jolted the elevator, followed by a metal groan that set teeth on edge, and it came to an abrupt halt. In an instant, they were plunged into a dead silence and darkness. A few seconds later, the emergency light flickered on, casting a bleak red glow that made everyone's face look eerie. The air seemed to thicken with cold. "Damn, power's out." Su Hu cursed under his breath, quickly reaching for the emergency switch beside him. Manual release. Screech. The twisted metal scream nearly tore eardrums. Su Hu gritted his teeth, his arm muscles bulging as he forced the elevator door open a crack. Light cut through the darkness of the car. The scene beyond the gap in the door made everyone catch their breath. Something was wrong. This was not the underground passage they had entered. Before them lay a vast space, frighteningly empty. The structure. The main entrance hall of the institute. The thought had barely crossed her mind when Zhaoya's body reacted first. An invisible force surged around her, ready to erupt at any moment. She stared at every shadow beyond the door. The hall was eerily quiet. Only the wind howled through the broken doors and windows, echoing in the empty hall. The originally sturdy bulletproof glass doors and windows were now nothing but shattered fragments and twisted metal frames. An icy wind immediately rushed in, carrying a choking dust along with a faint scent of rust mingled. It was blood. Over a dozen bodies lay sprawled on the floor, all wearing the institute's white uniforms. The blood had long dried black, congealed on the ground, and the bodies a gruesome sight. The moment Han Dongsheng stepped half a foot out of the elevator, a sharp, piercing pain shot through his back, distinct from the bone spur growth he had felt before. Deeper, more intense. Beneath his skin, new skeletal structures seemed to writhe, grow, and reshape. The image of his brother holding up the collapsing ceiling, those words, "Live on," seemed to act as a catalyst, merging into his body. His ability. Was it evolving? Becoming closer to his brother's complete form? Just then, a series of subtle whistling sounds cut through the air, and a string of bright red laser dots precisely projected onto their chests. An icy, emotionless, killing intent instantly enveloped them. "Don't move." A hoarse metallic command echoed from the shadows deep within the hall. With the words, over a dozen figures in black tactical suits with tactical masks emerged from behind the broken pillars and collapsed decorations. They all held oddly shaped weapons, their muzzles glowing with a deep blue light. The same energy weapons Han Dongsheng had seen before. The man leading them wore no mask. Half his face was crisscrossed with scars made even more grotesque in the red emergency light. The scarred man. His gaze swept rapidly over Su Hu, Zhao Yuha, and Han Dongsheng, finally settling on Liu Ruoxin, who was shielded behind Su Hu. In that moment, the scarred man's body visibly stiffened, his knuckles white on the weapon, his breath seeming to halt for half a second before he forced himself to relax. Liu Ruoxin. His voice was even lower and raspier than before, the emotions within it complex and unreadable, but the shock was unmistakable. "You really are alive. Just as your mother predicted." Liu Ruoxin shuddered violently, her small hands clutching the strap of her backpack, her face turning deathly pale. Her eyes widened, her voice trembling uncontrollably with shock and suspicion. You know my mother." The scarred man did not answer. He simply stood there, letting the red emergency light cast shifting shadows on his face. The atmosphere in the hall grew even heavier and more ominous because of his words. Liu Ruoxin. The scar-faced man's voice spread through the hall carrying a metallic friction. You're indeed still alive. Just as your mother foretold. Liu Ruoxin's eyes widened abruptly, her fingers gripping the backpack straps, turning white. You knew my mother. The scar-faced man did not answer immediately. He raised his hand, signaling the surrounding dark muzzles to lower. Then from his pocket he pulled out a black magnet. The card bore the national emblem with a blue barcode at the bottom, flickering silently. Long Tao, codenamed Dragon Team leader of the National Special Incident Response Unit, a level action group. His tone was flat and steady, the scar on his face twitching slightly with the muscles. 3 months ago, Dr. Li Ling, your mother, submitted an urgent warning to us. She said the virus was about to spiral out of control, and... He paused, glancing at Han Dongsheng. The scar seemed to tighten, adding a hint of gunpowder and confusion to the air. And she specifically requested we protect her daughter. She said you carry crucial information. At that moment, a series of muffled explosions came from beneath the research institute, as if something had detonated underground, shaking the floor beneath their feet. Dragon Team waved his hand, cutting off Liu Ruoxin's impending words. It's not safe here. Follow me. 10 minutes later, inside the modified military truck, each of the 4 occupants took a corner. The truck was packed with equipment, several computer screens, streaming data, weapons, and communication devices mounted on the walls. Han Dongsheng curled up in a corner. Inside his body it felt as though his bones were being hammered repeatedly, sharp pains surging through him. K00, his brother Han Hu's death, churned in his mind like a pot of kanji, as if something was trying to break through the ground within him, reassembling itself. Su Hu and Zhao Yuha sat on folding chairs in the middle of the truck, their bodies tense, like leopards ready to pounce. Dragon Team pushed a tablet toward Liu Ruoxin. Take a look. The screen lit up, revealing a woman's face. Around 40, her black hair meticulously coiled up, wearing glasses with a sharp yet warm expression behind the lenses. Liu Ruoxin's body trembled violently, nearly knocking over her water glass. Mom. Her voice was as soft as a sigh. The recording began. Dr. Li Ling's voice came through the speaker, unnervingly calm, yet taut. Ruoxin, if you're seeing this, it means Dr. Han has completed the basic transformation. She tapped her fingers unconsciously on the table. The board used Project K to develop a neural network virus. Their goal is not to cure the sick, but to create controllable biological weapons. The research of Han Dongsheng and his brother Han, who was tampered with from the very beginning. She paused as if gathering strength. Only Dr. Han can control the zombies and stop their genesis plan. Remember, the crystal core is the key. The transformation tower in the city center, that's the real target. You carry memory fragments I implanted. Those experiences and knowledge you always thought were from a past life. Liu Ruoxin's face instantly lost color. She instinctively covered her mouth, her body trembling slightly. She lunged for her backpack, pulling out the small notebook filled with writing. Her fingers shook uncontrollably as she flipped through pages frantically. This isn't my handwriting. Her voice quivered, tears quickly blurring her vision. I thought these were my own research notes, but... Su Hu leaned over. The notebook indeed contained many characters distinctly more skilled and heavier than Liu Ruoxin's usual handwriting. Your mother was a top neurologist, Dragon Team's voice rumbled lowly. She used a special technique to break crucial information into fragments and implant them into your subconscious. Whenever you encountered specific triggers, like a certain type of zombie or an experimental scenario, these fragments would surface, making you mistakenly think they were memories from a past life. Impossible. Liu Ruoxin shot up, her small face flushed. I remember everything. The zombie outbreak, how we escaped, and... Her words abruptly caught. Her finger stopped at the last page of the notebook. There a line of text she had no memory of writing. Ruoxin, I'm sorry for dragging you into this disaster. Trust Dr. Han, he is the only hope. Love, Mom. Below the words was a date. Exactly 3 months before the apocalypse erupted. No. Liu Ruoxin's legs gave way, and she collapsed back into her chair, as if drained. Han Dongsheng, enduring the intense pain, moved beside her. His already grayish finger hesitated, then simply rested lightly on her shoulder. He pulled out paper and pen, scratching crooked words. Your memories are real, only the source is different. We need you, Dr. Li arranged for you to transfer schools 3 months ago to one on the edge of this city, Dragon Team continued. She foresaw the disaster, but couldn't stop it. All she could do was leave clues. We've been searching for you. It wasn't until today, when an abnormal energy wave alarm went off at the institute, that we pinpointed your location. Zhao Yuha had been silent, but now she turned sharply to Dragon Team. Why are you helping us? Long Team did not answer directly. He pulled up another video. In the footage, Dr. Li Ling in a white coat was busy in the lab beside a much younger Dragon Team, whose face was not yet marred by the terrifying scar. I owe her my life, Dragon Team said flatly. During an overseas mission, her research saved me, and he then turned to Han Dongsheng. Dr. Han, how much do you remember now? Han Dongsheng shook his head and wrote on paper fragments, incomplete. You need more energy. Dragon Team opened a silver metal case beside him. Inside lay a fist-sized blue crystal core. Its surface bore eerie patterns that flowed slowly, emitting a faint blue glow. This is a second-grade crystal core we extracted from a test subject in Sector B. Dr. Li said only by absorbing enough energy can you access the complete neural network. Han Dongsheng's body leaned forward slightly. The crystal core seemed to possess a magnetic allure, stirring the restless bone spurs and faint electric currents within him. An indescribable yearning surged within him. He paused, then looked toward Liu Ruoxin. The girl still stared fixedly at the notebook, her eyes hollow and unsettling. Give her some time, he wrote, then took the crystal core, heavy in his hand, emitting a faint blue glow. After a moment's hesitation, Han Dongsheng raised the core to his lips. Liu Ruoxin jerked her head up. Zombie brother, wait. But it was too late. Han Dongsheng opened his mouth and swallowed the entire crystal core. In an instant, the world dissolved into countless specks of light before his eyes. Agony. Indescribable agony. It felt as if a miniature nuclear bomb had been detonated inside him. Every muscle fiber, every bone twisted and reshaped under searing heat. He felt at his knees, convulsing uncontrollably. Beneath his ashen skin, blue currents of electricity crackled like lightning, darting in every direction. Zombie brother. Liu Ruoxin's scream came from far away. The bone spurs on Han Dongsheng's back extended and fused at a visible rate, eventually forming a complete pair of skeletal wings. They unfurled like demonic appendages, filling nearly half the carriage. Electricity coursed over the surface of the bone wings, each bone glowing with blue light. His chest and arms displayed rudimentary bone armor similar to K00S. Though less complete than that monster's, it was far more agile. Then came the explosion of perception. Han Dongsheng's consciousness suddenly expanded, piercing through the carriage, through buildings, through the entire city. He could sense every zombie within a 10-kilometer radius, the location of every mutant. Their states, their abilities, even their faint conscious fluctuations, all vividly mapped in his mind. Thousands of signals wove into a vast network, and he was its center. Even more astonishing, he could feel a powerful will calling and guiding all zombies through this network, moving them toward the same direction, the city center. Zombie brother. Liu Ruoxin approached cautiously. Han Dongsheng slowly opened his eyes. His irises had turned deep blue, faint electric sparks flickering around his pupils. He reached out, gently touched Liu Ruoxin's cheek, then wrote, I can sense all the zombies. After a pause, he added, something in the city center is calling them. Captain Long nodded and pulled up a satellite image. Look at this. Everyone gasped. At the city center, a colossal structure was taking shape. It was not made of steel and concrete, but of countless zombies and mutated creatures climbing and stacking upon one another, forming a towering tower of flesh that scraped the sky. At its pinnacle, a blinding blue light shot straight into the clouds like a bridge reaching to the heavens. They're building some kind of signal tower, Captain Long said, his voice heavy. According to energy fluctuation analysis, if it's completed, the mutation signal will blanket the entire province, and farther. We have 12 hours to stop it, or the mutation will spread across the country. Suhu pressed his back against the cold carriage wall, face pale. What the hell kind of sci-fi movie plot is this? Zhao Yuha lightly tapped the thermos floating beside her, its shadow stretched long under the carriage lights. Is this a physical manifestation of a biological neural network? It needs a physical structure to amplify the signal range. Dr. Li calls it the conversion tower, Captain Long explained. A neural network requires a central hub to control the whole. If I understand correctly, this tower is meant to complete the final stage of some origin project. Han Dongsheng suddenly shuddered violently. His bone wings snapped open, nearly hitting the carriage roof. He clutched his head and let out a painful growl. Someone is speaking, he wrote, trembling in my head. Liu Ruoxin immediately grabbed his hand. Who? What are they saying? Han Dongsheng struggled to write a few words. A woman's voice. Dr. Han, welcome back to the network. The voice was cold and familiar, echoing directly in his mind. Your consciousness upload is 85 complete. Please proceed to the central conversion tower for final integration. Han Dongsheng shot to his feet, all bone spikes, erect electric arcs wildly dancing at his fingertips. He wrote a line, pressing so hard that the paper nearly tore. I recognized that voice. It's Lin Xiaoyu. Captain Long's face turned grim. Impossible. Dr. Lin Xiaoyu died in the early outbreak. Han Dongsheng shook his head and continued writing. She didn't die? She's in the tower, she said. He paused, fingers trembling slightly. She said she needs my brain to complete the integration. A dead silence fell over the carriage. Liu Ruoxin flipped open her notebook and pointed to one page. There's a note here. Dr. Lin Xiaoyu, expert in biological neurology, core member of Project K responsible for consciousness upload algorithm design. She turned to the next page, her voice turning puzzled. It says here that in the experiment, she volunteered to be a test subject. Code name KM. Damn it, Su Hu punched the carriage wall. How many more monsters are waiting for us? Zhao Yuha frowned in thought. If she also transformed, she might be further along than Han Hu or Dongsheng. Maybe she is the control hub. Han Dongsheng wrote his final line. She said only I can replace her and become the new master of the network. Captain Long stood up, checked his weapons, voice cold and hard. We have 12 hours to destroy that tower or the entire country falls. He looked at Han Dongsheng. Dr. Han, how many zombies can you control now? Han Dongsheng closed his eyes and sensed the network woven from thousands of consciousnesses. He could feel every node, every connection, but to control them all simultaneously. He wrote about 300. Not enough. Captain Long nodded. We have a plan. He brought up a map of the city's underground pipelines and pointed to a tunnel leading to the city center. This route bypasses the main zombie horde and goes straight to the tower base. We brought enough explosives. If you can control enough zombies to clear the way for us. Liu Ruoxin suddenly interrupted him, her small face pale. Wait, I found it. She flipped through her notebook, her fingers stopping on a page dense with formulas. It says here that to completely destroy the neural network, you must sever the connections between the central hub and the nodes. Blowing up the tower itself is useless. You have to destroy the central consciousness. She lifted her head, eyes brimming with tears, looking at Han Dongsheng. You have to destroy Dr. Lin Xiaoyu's brain. And it must be done by another consciousness that has connected to the network. Silence fell once more in the carriage. Han Dongsheng slowly rose, his bone wings spreading behind him. He walked to the window, and through the bulletproof glass gazed at the ever-growing tower of flesh in the city center. The blue light shot skyward like a sword about to pierce the heavens. He wrote one final question on the paper. Liu Ruoxin, do you trust me? The little girl nodded firmly. Of course. You're my zombie brother. Han Dongsheng turned to Captain Long. Take us to the tower. I need more crystal cores. Captain Long stared at him for a few seconds, then nodded curtly. We leave in 10 minutes. Prepare. Just then the onboard computer emitted a series of urgent alarms. On the screen, the red dots around the tower began multiplying at an alarming rate, as if every zombie in the city had been awakened. The piercing alarm still echoed in the carriage as the red dots representing zombies exploded and proliferated wildly on the screen. Captain Long stared at the rapidly expanding red area, his throat tightening. The situation is deteriorating. His voice was strained. Construction speed has increased. We might not have 12 hours. Before he could finish, Han Dongsheng straightened abruptly, standing in the center of the carriage. His bone wings snapped fully open, their tips nearly grazing the cold ceiling. Blue-white arcs of electricity crackled wildly across his body, emitting a low, buzzing sound. The air carried a faint smell of ozone. The chaotic whispers in his brain instantly turned into piercing shrieks.